I tried not to be too weird. That was me trying not to be too weird. My gut is catching up to where my sort of explicit system 2 reasoning already was. I feel like we're now on the part of the exponential curve where it feels exponential.
The inside view. The inside view.
The inside view.
Robert Miles, I've started watching your videos in 2017. You were just starting your channel at the time. You had done some very cool videos with Computerphile that had done super well, millions of views.
Like 500,000 views, but yeah.
Just 500,000 views.
I mean, maybe if you add up all of them together, yeah.
And in the comments, you were like, oh yeah, I'm starting a new YouTube channel. Please subscribe. On your Twitter profile, the pinned tweet is still something like, I'm starting my own YouTube channel about AI safety. Tell your friends if you have some. Since that tweet, half a decade ago, you've accumulated 100,000 subscribers by publishing a total of 40 videos. And it's been a blast to see your content evolve throughout the years. I'm honored to have you, the OG AI safety YouTuber, as a guest on The Inside View. Thanks, Rob, for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is that I have a package for you. And what this package is about t-shirts.
Oh, wow.
I'm wearing one, but I also have one for you. This one is a bit big. But yeah.
The scale maximalist.
Scale maximalist. I thought you might like it if you want to wear it in one of your videos.
Wow, okay. Have you ever seen me in a t-shirt? Has
Not
anyone?
Yet. Not yet.
Yeah. Wow. And then on the other side, the goalpost mover, of course.
Yeah. I think it says the goalpost mover.
Yeah. I like it.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I will, yeah, I don't know when I would wear it because I always wear like what I'm wearing now.
I think the best is when you go to ICML in the ribs.
But yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No worries.
I'll put this down here.
So yeah, I've started watching your videos on Computerphile a few years back. And I think it made sense to just go through the origin story of the channel. So yeah, you were doing those videos about corrigibility, some about the grand future of artificial general intelligence. How did you get up to start your own channel? What brought you to this path?
Yeah, I started making videos with Computerphile just because a kind of random coincidence, actually, right? I was a PhD student. I didn't have a big strategic plan. I was a PhD student at the University of Nottingham, and the way that Computerphile operates is Sean goes around and just talks to researchers about their work. And at the time when I bumped into him in the queue for a barbecue, I had just been reading a bunch of Yudkowsky, and I was like, yeah, I got something I could talk about, something kind of interesting. And then that video did very well because it was, I think, a lot more dramatic than a lot of the stuff on Computerphile at the time. It's
right.
Interesting stuff, but pretty mainstream computer science. And here's this guy with insane hair talking about the end of the world or whatever. I tried not to be too weird. That was me trying not to be too weird, trying to express clearly the concept without the dramatic sci-fi-ness being the focus, because I think people just so immediately go to science fiction, and it's so unhelpful because it puts your mind in completely the wrong frame for thinking about the problem. So I try and be real about it, this is the actual world that we actually live in.
I think that's what people liked about the videos, is that, you don't need to make a bunch of assumptions. It's just using common sense. And they're oh yeah, this is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a problem. And yeah, sounds kind of crazy, but the world is actually kind of crazy.
How did you end up reading a bunch of Yudkowsky before going to PhD?
Oh yeah, I used to have, back when my mind was faster and I could focus on things for longer, I used to have this rule where I had a 3 strikes and you're in rule, where if I stumbled across 3 different pieces of work by a given author, all of which were excellent, I would read everything that author ever wrote. I came up with this rule because I had a Kindle and I was like very excited. This was like 2009 or something, right? And having a Kindle was very exciting. I can carry all my books with me. I can read all the time. I can read anything I want. And so I was like consuming a huge amount of written material. And yeah, so this rule triggered almost immediately on Elias Yudkowsky, and so I just just mainlined everything that he wrote between 2016 and 2010. There's like an ebook that CypherGoth put together.
Is it the rationality from AI to zombies?
No. This was in like 2010 that I did this. So it was it's the material that would become that, but like unedited, unabridged, in chronological order. And I was like reading this for ages, and then at a certain point, I was like, I've been reading this for a while, and like I read fairly fast, and I'm still doing it. So I did a word count check, and it's like 1 million words.
Wow.
I pulled a paperback off my shelf and like measured it and counted the pages and whatever, the number of words on a page of my Kindle, and I figured it out that this book, if it were a physical book, would have been 2 feet thick.
Yeah. So what happened is in 2019, I actually printed the entire sequences.
Wow.
I went to like a printer shop, and it was, I think, like 2 things that thick.
Sounds about right.
And I tried to like read it from like start to finish, because people in Less Wrong were complaining I didn't read the sequences.
Yeah. And I read the sequences. But the thing is, like, I don't know, that makes it sound like, oh, I did this impressive intellectual feat to like read all of this text. But it was like it's like popcorn. Like every little blog post, I was like, oh, yeah, right, that makes sense. And like I hadn't thought about it that way before. And this is like a useful tool or a useful concept that I can like see myself applying productively in the future. Next one. And I mean, they're not all bangers, but like then they're not that long. You go through them all. I actually still recommend it. I mean, I would recommend now, I guess, getting an edited volume, but I can't vouch for those. I haven't actually read them, but it could use some editing, I guess. Yeah.
Do you think it's about AI safety or about just like how to think better?
It's both.
I think that one of the main goals was to lead more people into considering AI safety, but I don't remember a lot of the blogs being about AI particularly.
Well, a lot of them are secretly about AI. There's like certain types of mistakes that people make when thinking about AI, which it turns out are mistakes that they make in a bunch of other places as well. And so if you can correct that mistake more broadly, you improve the way that people think about AI as well as a side effect, which, I mean, obviously was the intended main effect. But I think it helps in a bunch of areas.
And so what did happen between the moment you read those things and let's say the moment you started your YouTube channel, like 2017? Did you just like read Less Wrong from the side, or did you like think about those things on your own?
Yeah, I thought about them, and I thought about what I wanted to do about the problem. And I guess always, like, from an early age, I thought, when I was a child, people would ask me, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to be when you grow up, right? And I would say, I imagine I'm like 7 years old at this point, I would say, well, the job that I probably end up doing probably doesn't exist yet, because I was a little smartass.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And people would be like, oh.
Meta take.
Smart kid. Yeah, this kid's going places, whatever. But like this was like 100%, 90% an attempt to avoid like thinking about the question at all, right? I was just trying to dodge the question.
I'm from the future.
Yeah. And
YouTube hasn't been invented yet.
Right. But like, and the thing is, like, it's kind of unfair how completely correct I was, right? Like, yeah.
Buy Bitcoin.
That did. Very precocious 7-year-old. No, but like, if people would then, because I was obviously dodging the question, people would press me further and I'd be like, I don't know, like some kind of scientist maybe, or maybe like a teacher. And I thought like, well, being a teacher is like, I really always enjoyed explaining things to people, but only people who want to learn. I feel like a lot of being a teacher is like class control, right? And like if somebody is actually interested in the thing that you're explaining to them, it's a wonderful experience. And if they're not, it's the worst. And so I didn't really want to be a teacher. But yeah, some kind of teacher / scientist, question mark, job that doesn't exist is like about as good as you could expect to have done it that far ahead, right?
Question mark.
Yeah.
Now you're like both a teacher and a scientist.
Yeah, closer to, I mean, much more teacher than scientist, but science teacher.
And if people want to listen to you, they just like press play. And if they're bored, they just like go to another video.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, the people who are there are people who want to be there.
Was it your first time explaining things to people, or were you like still explaining like concepts to other people? Because with Computerphile, you did like maybe like 5 videos explaining concept, right?
Well, actually, so the first video I made for Computerphile was about cryptography. It was about public key encryption. And that was just because I had stumbled across a really unusually good explanation of how public key encryption works. And I was like, oh, this is how it should always have been explained. I'm going to do that on Computerphile. And then afterwards, I was like, oh, also, all of this Yudkowsky is pretty interesting.
By the way, read the sequences.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember, I think on another podcast, you said that one of the reasons you wanted to be a YouTuber, or that you didn't see too much risk in being a YouTuber, is that you want the best explanation for a concept to be like on YouTube, be the first one. So you thought that you might have a shot to be like to give like the best explanation you can give for a concept. And that's one of the reasons you like spend a bunch of time in videos, is that you want to give like the best explanation, or something that like the second guy on YouTube would not be able to pull off that easily.
Yeah. I hold myself to a high standard on this kind of thing, where I feel like there's definitely a thing on YouTube and the standard incentive structure where it's like produce a lot of output, regular output, high frequency, 1 video a week. Maybe some of them will be shit. Oh wait, can we swear on this podcast?
Can we what? Yeah. Let's go for it.
Okay, cool. And that's the normal thing, right? Please the algorithm, whatever. Whereas in my mind, if I'm going to make a video about a subject, then I kind of imagine later on, if somebody comes along and says, oh, I'm curious about such and such concept, what would you recommend? If I would recommend anything other than my video, why did I make that video, right? Like I want it to be the best available sort of introduction to the idea. And that can cause problems with like perfectionism and whatever, but like, I think is that true? Probably a majority of the videos that I have made about a topic, I consider to be like the best intro explanation of that topic that is available. Certainly the best on video. There are better explanations in text, but I think it's also really like if an idea is important, you want it to be out there in a bunch of forms. You want it to be podcasts, you want it to be videos, you want it to be text, books, blog posts, tweet threads. Like you definitely, there's like, it's really undervalued, I think, to recapitulate ideas in new media. Everybody who's writing or producing stuff, I'm overgeneralizing, many people, they want to be original. They want to be novel. They want to get credit for like having had a good idea and explained it. But like there's so much value in just like finding good ideas and either explaining them better or condensing them or just making them available to an audience that hasn't been exposed to them before. Like the issue with AI alignment is not so much that, I mean, okay, there's a few issues, but like a major issue is that like the overwhelming majority of relevant people have never been exposed to the arguments in any form, right? They've been exposed to like the most like cartoon possible thing about like, oh, saving us from the robots or whatever. And like, even just the basic laying out of the core arguments has like not reached the overwhelming majority of people.
Now I talk to founders or people here in the Bay who go and talk to like actual like AI researchers, like talk to Elias who's carried up an AI, and they like give the like basic arguments for AI alignment, and they like update in real time. They're like, oh, this is an actual problem.
Right.
Maybe I should like work more on it.
Yeah, whatever you think about Silicon Valley, it does encourage mind changing, like actually like updating based on new arguments, or like taking arguments seriously, being willing to pivot, as they say. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, so yeah, so what you said about like having the best explanation, I think it's very important to like distill the concepts. So that is like you take like less effort to go through a paper. You just like need to watch the Robert Moss video about it, and then you get into it into like only 5 minutes. And is there like, do you think any other media except from like YouTube that would benefit from it? Like, do you think people should do like TikTok or those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to do TikTok a little bit. Yeah, I don't like TikTok, but for something I don't like, I spend a lot of time there. And so I know which way the wind is blowing. And let it not be said that I do not also blow. So like, I think TikTok, I'm like long TikTok. I think it's going to eat YouTube's lunch by just being more fit. And so I've got to have a presence on that platform. But actually, yeah, so now it's a little bit annoying. I started putting out I put something out on TikTok, and my audience's reaction was immediately like, TikTok is bad and you shouldn't be there. Right. I'm like, yes, but like, let's be instrumental. And so what I said was like, well, look, I'm not going to put anything on TikTok that I don't also put on YouTube, right? I absolutely don't want to be the reason that anyone decides to download TikTok. But there's a big audience there that should be reached. And this actually caused a bunch of annoyance because like my thinking was, okay, well, what I'll do is I'll record these short vertical videos and I'll publish them simultaneously to TikTok and to YouTube Shorts, right? Because YouTube Shorts subtitle, we're scared of TikTok, right?
Please, TikTok, don't bully us.
Yeah, we can. Me too, but they're limited to 1 minute, right? They have to be 1 minute. And then like shortly after that, TikTok announced that you could have 3-minute videos. You can have 10-minute videos now.
Wow.
Yeah. And
do people use like TikTok for a 10-minute video?
It's not super common, but you see them from time to time. It's rough because you've got to keep people's attention every second during those 10 minutes. But 1 minute is just not enough time to say almost anything. And like, I thought the point of TikTok for me, of like making these shorts, we mentioned perfectionism before.
Yeah.
It's been a very long time since I released a video. And it just in general, like the gaps between my videos is much longer than I would like to be because I get bogged down in like the minutiae of like making this the best video they could possibly be and so on. And I thought, okay, making shorts, this is going to be nice. I can just like whip something out and just like do it very quickly and publish it and not care too much because the expectations are much lower for this kind of like handheld vertical video. But it turns out no, because if you want to say anything of any significance in a 1 minute video, you need to have an incredibly tightly scripted and tightly performed video. A 1 minute, it's like
punchline after punchline.
Yeah, but it's just like it's work. I think it was maybe Ben Franklin or someone who ended one of his letters with like, sorry for sending such a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one. That's how it is. It takes so much work to make a 1 minute video that says anything of consequence about a technical subject.
If you're into that, there's like a YouTube series by Ryan Trahan on like how he went from like 0 to like 1 million followers on TikTok. He tried to go to 1 million in like a week.
Wow.
Obviously didn't succeed. But like he like did like 3, 4, 8 videos of TikTok like every day, like doing editing on not like actual shot with his phone. And you see like all the time he spends like just like trying to come up with like a concept. Like he comes up with a joke and then he's like, oh yeah, let's shoot it. And then like the actual like shooting takes like, I don't know, half an hour.
Right.
But it's just like finding the good joke. But I guess like if you want to do like something technical and you explain stuff, it's even more difficult, right?
Yeah, like I'm interested in conveying some actual understanding. And in a minute, you just can't. or you have to make like 100 videos. I don't know, but it's like super irritating. So whereas like if you've got like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, that's enough time to get across one real concept to a level that's like actually satisfying. But then if I do that, then I can't publish it as a YouTube short. So then it's actually a YouTube video. Then it's like a much bigger deal. The expectations are more, whatever. So I've been trying a thing recently. I don't know how much people are interested in the like YouTube, TikTok, Meta stuff, or if we want to talk more about AI. But like,
I think a bunch of people on YouTube are interested in like the YouTube Meta.
Cool.
And maybe they like kind of want to know more about like what have you been doing, what are you up to, and
yeah,
updates on this.
Okay, so just to finish off the thing, then, I've been doing this thing where I try and shoot handheld with a gimbal in 4K, and then just like trying to keep myself in the middle of the frame, so that I can make like a 2 to 3 minute YouTube video and a 2 to 3 minute TikTok, one in 16:9 and one in like 9:16, like cropped out of the middle, simultaneously, because I don't want to be shooting separately for these two things. It's just like so much extra work. And I've been having some success with that. So I don't know, I'm still figuring out my strategy about these things. Yeah.
Wait, so it goes like both like horizontally and vertically? Because for TikTok is vertical, right?
Yeah. So you shoot in widescreen, but you just try and keep everything that's like actually important right in the middle of the frame, so that you can just crop out the sides and make the video once. Yeah.
So about the stuff you've been doing, I think you said that you haven't published a longer one in a couple of months.
Yeah, a long time.
Are you preparing one big thing, or?
It's a combination of a few factors. So like, firstly, a lot of videos just take a while. Like the iterated distillation and amplification video is one that I'm like pretty proud of. I used Manim, 3 Blue 1 Brown's math animation software for that. And like that video came out 4 months after the previous video, but that just took me 4 months. Like that was just 4 months of work. Animation is horrifying.
And now you know how to do animation, then you can do like other videos about.
Yeah, now I know that. I know never to do it again. Or to hire someone, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm starting to get to the point now where I'm like looking to hire a bunch of people. But yeah, in the last year, one thing is I got obsessed with this, like what turned out to be a very, very ambitious idea for the next video. I want to do a programming tutorial, which I've never done before. And in order to prepare for that, I had to learn how to actually implement the thing. Like I had to write the code for the thing that I would be implementing. Because at first I thought, oh, well, I'll figure it out as I go. It doesn't work at all. It's like, it turns out the thing I was trying to implement is really hard. It's like code I was writing in my, when I was a PhD student, is easier than this, right? Especially because I'm trying to be incredibly simple. I'm trying to like not introduce any dependencies and like as few dependencies, conceptual dependencies, as well as libraries. I'm writing this in Python from scratch using like basic programming concepts. And yet this should be like something that can tell you something meaningful about AGI.
Is something like coding a transformer from scratch?
It's more ambitious than that. So, and this was kind of stupid. Turns out it was kind of stupid, but I can't let it go because I honestly think that this video is going to be really good. So that's one thing. The other thing is I've just been doing a lot of things this year. I've been going to a lot of events, conferences, retreats, seminars, things like that. I think it's because coming out of COVID, there's just a lot of these things happening.
Right.
But also, I'm like reevaluating certain maxims that I have lived by for the past several years. Like when I was an undergrad, I made this rule for myself, similar to, I used to do this a lot, just like make rules for myself. Like the kind of rule that would compel you to like read a 1,000,000-page manuscript.
If you like a person 3 times, then you should go out with them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. This kind of thing. And so the rule I made was, like, I noticed as an undergrad, people would invite me to things, a random party, a club, an event, whatever. And I would think about it and I'd be like, do I feel like doing this? And usually the answer was like, nah, I don't really feel like doing this. And so I would say, no, thank you. But then every now and then I would be like successfully dragged to one of these things or whatever. And when I had that same feeling of like, I don't feel like doing it. And then I would have a great time, or I would like meet somebody great, or I would learn something new that was excellent or whatever. And so I was like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm not trusting my I don't feel like this impulse at all. If people invite me to something, I'm going to go. Just flat rule, default yes, unless I can think of a really good reason not to.
Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, right, exactly. Exactly. So like, and then I think the combination of like the end of COVID and also the fact that in the intervening time when I was like just in my house and not seeing anyone, the channel became much larger. And so I became like a bigger deal. And so like people invited me to more interesting stuff. And this year I've just been saying yes to everything, and it has eaten up a lot of my time. And it's like really, really great. Like a lot of the stuff I've gone to has been great. I've met amazing people. I have so many great new ideas for videos from all of these exciting conversations that I'm having and everything. But I was in Puerto Rico, and then I was in like rural Washington State for a bit for a retreat there, and then I came to the Bay for a week, and then I went to the Bahamas briefly for an event there, and then I was back home, and then it was like EA Global, the Oxford one, and then the London one, and then then EA Global here, and then the Future Forum, and like, yeah. I'm doing too many things, clearly, but they're all like good. I don't regret any of them. I just regret not getting like long contiguous stretches of time to like finish this video off and get it published.
It's like we didn't get any social during 2 years, and now we're getting like all of them in like 6 months.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And like also I got COVID through all of this, right? Because like obviously eventually I'd got COVID, but it was actually fine. Like it was.
You're good?
Yeah. I was just like kind of tired and sick for a couple of days, and then I got over it, and I was like, man, did I bring my entire life to a halt for that? Like,
oh
yeah, because I had a bunch of vaccines, right? I had loads.
3,
4.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why 4?
The more the merrier. No, because the efficacy starts to wear off after like some number of months, 6 months or something. And
so you had your booster shots you were like one of the first ones to have a booster, and then you took another one 6 months after.
Yeah, I timed them pretty strategically. So it's like before I was going to like a major conference or a major whatever, like a couple of weeks before would be when I would get the next like booster or the second shot or the whatever it was. Yeah.
I can see the small like 7 years old Robert Miles being like very meta about things, like predicting the future. Yeah, one thing that happened a lot during the pandemics was people like staying home more, and also Discord exploded. And you have started a new Discord server that was supposed to be like Patreon only.
Yeah, it was originally.
And now it's popping a little bit more.
Yeah, we're kind of gradually opening it up. Yeah, so it started, everyone was like, you should make a Discord server for your viewers, for your community, whatever. And I had not really like used Discord very much and didn't really know what it was about and so on. And I was like, I don't want to have a fan club. You know what I mean? Like if I make a Discord that's like the Rob Miles AI YouTube channel Discord, and it's just like a bunch of people sitting around and talking about my videos, I guess. It feels weird to me. It feels like, I don't know, egotistical or something to like preside over this space of just people who are there because of you and like your stuff. I don't know. I was like not very comfortable with it. And so the original plan was like, I had this idea. What if we can give the thing like an outward focus? What if we can have it be about something that isn't me. And I simultaneously had this problem of like, I get a bunch of YouTube comments, many of which are questions, some of which are good questions. And I just like don't have time. Like there's a lot of them. And it's also not a very good use of my time because to like write an answer to one person, because the YouTube comment system does not do a good job of like surfacing that content to the people who need to see it. So it's like realistically a small number of people. I could spend half an hour coming up with like a good reply to a question, and then nobody's going to see that apart from like the person who asked it and a few people who happen to open that comment up. So so I wrote this bot called Stampy, who like, it's a dumb joke based on the stamp collector thing from the early Computerphile video.
You were the one to invent the stamp collector.
Weirdly, no. I chose stamps because there was an article about it, which I think was on like the Singularity Institute's page or so, like back in the day. I've not been able to find it. I'm certain I didn't hallucinate it. It might be in the Wayback Machine somewhere. But, you know, Google in the Wayback Machine doesn't work, so I don't know.
Way back.
Yeah, I popularized stamp. I mean, yeah, it's the same as the paperclip maximizer basically, but it's stamps instead of paperclips, and therefore, you know, you have Clippy, the paperclip maximizer, and Stampy, the stamp maximizer.
What does Stampy do in your Discord?
Yeah, so originally what Stampy did was he would watch the YouTube comments through the YouTube API, look for things that look like questions, and then pull those out, keep them in a queue. And then in the like general channel on the Discord, if ever there was like no comments for a certain period of time, like, you know, conversation has died down, Stampy would pipe up and say, hey, someone asked this question on YouTube. Like, what do we think about this question? And so it's like, it's serving two purposes, right? Firstly, it's like providing a nice source of like regular alignment or AI safety related like things for people to talk about. And then, you know, Stampy would ask this and then people would be like, oh yeah, that is an interesting question. I think the answer is this. I think the answer is that. And have a debate, have a discussion. And then at a certain point you can say, okay, I think like we've got something we're happy with, write something up in Discord and say, Stampy, post this to YouTube. And the idea is then Stampy will take that and post it as a reply to the comment.
Who does the replying? Is it like you write the answer, or is it like someone from Discord?
Anyone on Discord, they write it and they just like say to Stampy to send it, and then Stampy will post it under the bot's account. And this was like very cool for a short period of time. And then we had this one video that a lot of people asked the same question about. And so then we had Stampy giving a lot of the same answer because people were like, oh, we already answered this. And then we also had some functionality that was like, hey, Stampy, has anybody asked a question like this before? And he would like run a sort of semantic search on the previous, or was it semantic search, a keyword search, whatever, on like previous answers. So you can like find similar things. And so we were giving the same answer, and the answer also contained external links because we were like linking to resources on the alignment forum or archive or whatever.
But YouTube is very bad for links.
Awful. And so Stampy was in bot prison. And like, as far as we know, is still in bot prison. Sort it out, YouTube.
What does it mean to be in bot prison?
Oh, it's the worst. It's actually like, if you imagine what it's like to have a bot that's like shadow banned or whatever, it's the worst because everything works except the answers, like the comments never show up. But it's actually worse than that because they do show up, but then they all immediately disappear after about 30 seconds. So like, you tell it to post it. If you look, it gives you like the URL that it's posted it to. The API is given like a 200 response. As far as the thing is concerned, it's fine. And then sometime over the course of the next like minute and a half, that will just silently disappear with no notification of any kind.
So is Stampy heaven banned?
Yeah, I guess Stampy's heaven banned. And it's so annoying because like there are people who, you know, watch my stuff who like work at YouTube, and some of them are on my Discord and so on. And there is an internal like tracking number for this issue, because the other thing is like Stampy, that bot account, I made it an approved submitter. That's like a thing you can do on your YouTube account to be like, this person is like authorized. I made it a mod on my comments. I made it something else. I set every possible thing to be like, no, this bot is legit. Let it post what it wants. Didn't seem to help. That's been ongoing in YouTube for, God, like a year now.
Can you create another bot?
Yeah, that's what we're doing now. But also, like, independently of that, we shifted focus. Because like the actual, in fact, as I was saying before, posting a reply on YouTube is actually not that high value, right? That's not where there's not many people see it there. So we just started storing these, and now we have a website that we are hoping will become a comprehensive FAQ about AI safety.
What's the website called?
Stampy.ai.
Oh, you have the domain name.
Yeah. But it's like pre-alpha right now, right? It's not really. So I'm not actually sure if we want to talk about it on the podcast. Well, we'll talk about it. Maybe we can delay the release of this episode or something. I don't know. We're not quite ready to like fully launch. We'll see.
Maybe you can get like more people to help you with the website.
Yeah, that's the hope. And so then, yeah, comprehensive FAQ, so that anyone who has any question, this is the dream. Anyone who like has heard something about AI safety or AI alignment research or whatever can go and ask their question on this thing and get like a good high quality human authored response. So it's not really an FAQ, it's like an AQ, effectively.
Answer a question.
Frequently asked, right? So just any asked questions. If it's been asked, we want it on Stampy. And
It's all the questions that have appeared on YouTube and you guys have answered on Discord.
Right. And so now we're like, we're broadening that, or rather we have broadened that as well to like, you can submit questions directly on Stampy.ai and we've like just written a bunch of them, just like, what are some questions that people have asked you at any point in your life about this, and just like throw them in there as well.
I believe there's like a other website, subdomain like ui.stampy.ai, where you have maybe like 10 of them that are maybe like more organized and it's better UI.
Yeah. So the core thing, and you know, probably by the time we actually launch, Stampy.ai will be the UI, and the other thing will be like wiki.stampy.ai or something like that. We're probably going to rearrange the domains because the back end is a wiki. We're using Semantic Media Wiki so that we have a really nice interface for communal sort of collaboration on those answers, and like processing them, tagging them, organizing them, all of that kind of work. And so like having an answer to every question anyone might have about AI safety is like pretty ambitious, but it's ambitious in the same way as like Wikipedia is ambitious, right? It's just like, yeah, we want to have a really in-depth quality answer article about every topic that's like noteworthy. Is it insane? And yet they pulled it off, and I think we can do the same because actually it's much smaller than that.
How is that different from the Orbital project?
I don't know a lot about Orbital, but I think they were more focused on, well, firstly, like longer articles, explainers. I think they had a higher requirement for expertise. I don't know that you could get like a large group of people who are capable of writing Orbital articles to the standard that they wanted are like high-level alignment researchers already or something, and it's not necessarily the best use of their time to do that or something like that. That's my read of the situation.
They had a high bar, and I think like most of them were written by the guy, Elias Yudkowsky. Yeah. And there were it wasn't just him, but like everyone who was writing on there could also be doing good research with that time, you know? And so then there's a question of like, what's the most efficient use of people's time, I suppose. Whereas with Stampy, what I'm hoping is there's a bunch of easy questions, right? There's a bunch of questions I get on my YouTube videos all the time, which can be answered very well by watching the YouTube video that they're a comment on. Right? Like so often. Go watch the video.
Yeah. So often I wanna reply with like, oh man, yeah, if you're interested in that topic, have I got the rest of the video you're currently watching for you? Like,
you said like, oh, here's a link for you, and then it goes back to like the same page.
Yeah, no, I think people like watch the video and a question occurs to them and they like pause the video and write a question. And then presumably watch the rest of the video in which it's answered. But what I mean is like the skill floor for like being able to usefully answer questions is pretty low. Like there's a thing, I'm kind of inspired by most what I would call actually functional educational institutions, by which I mean those not based on the like Prussian model of education where we have like these rigid classes and we're trying to manufacture factory workers.
So things like Coursera or GitHub projects.
Yeah, well, I mean, as communities, like going back further in time, the way that schooling used to be done, it was a lot of one-on-one tutoring, but also you didn't have these like classes in the same way. In a good educational institution, everyone is both a teacher and a student, right? Because the best person to learn something from is a person who just learned it. There are a lot of people who, like, getting the top researchers in the field to teach undergrads is wild, right? Like, how is that a good use of anyone's time? Because firstly, this person is a preeminent researcher. They got better things to do. Secondly, they're skilled at research, not skilled at teaching, necessarily, right? And they're not like, they don't really train them in teaching. And thirdly, thirdly, they're like extremely naturally gifted, probably, in order to be where they are. And so certain things will be obvious to them that are not obvious to all of these undergrads. And fourthly, the things that they're teaching are things that they learned decades ago that they have completely forgotten what it's like to not already know. And if you don't know what it's like to not know something, it's very hard to teach it because it's an exercise in like empathy, right? In like modeling the other person's mental state so that you can explain things to them.
Sometimes they're learning at the same time you're doing as well. So like for AI courses, if you move to like fourth year of college or fifth year, then you need to like start learning about deep learning, right? You cannot just like go on like GoFi all the time. So you start learning deep learning, and then you realize that your teachers have like started learning about those things at the same time as you, and like they're like the problem is that their like depth of knowledge is just like so yeah, there's like a couple of neural networks. They're connected with like some weights, and yeah, that's it. If you want to learn more, just like go to the industry.
Yeah, that's like, that feels like there's a separate problem, which is that the field is advancing so quickly that like if you teach for 5 years, then you're out of date. Like I'm in this situation now. I like when I was a PhD student, that was whatever it was, 2013, 2014 or something. It's like, when was AlexNet?
2012. It hasn't been 10 years since AlexNet. That's what Karpati told me.
Right. So like there's all kinds of things about modern like deep learning that I have the most surface level understanding of. And, in my position, people expect me to know things, and I don't know things. Don't expect me to know things, please.
You know the things you make videos about.
Right. If I have made a video about it, then plausibly I know something about that subject. But yeah, more broadly. But yeah, so the point I was making was, that's what I want Stampy to be. I want the Stampy project and the community around it to be a place where people can learn. Because if you've watched my videos and you're interested and you like think you've basically understood them, there are questions on Stampy that you're fully qualified to answer. And there will also be questions that you're like almost qualified to answer. There'll be questions that like you can have a stab at, and if you just like spend an hour just Googling and like reading some of the relevant stuff, then you can answer, right? And hey, what do you know? You've learned something, right? There's a lot of things where like you know how to answer them, but until you actually try to sit down and write the answer out, you don't really know, right?
That's the real Stampy University. You just like try to answer questions in Discord. You try to like get answers on the new web page. Try to give some stuff, and then like it's by explaining that you learn the actual thing.
Exactly, and also it's like a collaborative thing. So writing an answer. There's various different ways that we could do this, but like the way it worked originally on Stampy, on the Discord, we would have. You write an answer, you ask Stampy to send it. He doesn't immediately send it, right? He'll say, oh, well, I'll send this when it's got enough stamps on it, right? When there's like enough postage to send it.
Nice.
And so we implemented this karma system whereby there's like a little stamp react on Discord that you can put on a reply. And when there are enough reacts, Stampy will actually post the thing. So you don't just let any random person on Discord post as the official bot, right? You don't want that. How
many karma do you have?
I have not checked. I can find out now if you like.
That's not
But yeah, so the point is that the value of the stamp that you put on is different from person to person, proportional to how many stamps you have. And this sounds like a recursive definition because it is. It's essentially PageRank. And so what that means is like, because the thing that you use stamps for is to say, I approve of this answer you wrote being published, that stamp effectively means, I think this person knows what they're talking about. And so you can then build up this big set of simultaneous equations that you just solve with NumPy. And that gives you a number that's like, to what extent does this person know what they're talking about in the opinion of people who know what they're talking about, right? And that's the number.
That's pretty similar to what Less Wrong does, where you have this karma. I think like at the beginning you have like 1 vote, and then like if you get 1,000 karma, then you get to like 7 votes. Maybe Eliezer has 10 votes. I don't know.
Yeah, it's similar to Less Wrong karma, but the way that Less Wrong karma works is it's time dependent. So like, suppose you're the world's biggest AI safety genius, and you have the potential to be, whatever. You have amazing takes, but you've just discovered Less Wrong, and you join Less Wrong. You have 1 karma, the same as some rando who has no idea what they're talking about, right?
Right.
And you can like vote on all of the stuff, but it has very, very little effect. And then later on, you can like make a bunch of posts and get a bunch of karma as people acknowledge the quality of your thinking. But all of that previous stuff was kind of wasted. Whereas in this case, we don't actually track a karma number. We just keep track of how many stamps everyone has given to everyone else. And so if you show up and you like express your opinion about a bunch of stuff and then later get a bunch of karma, all of your earlier votes are like retroactively updated to reflect your current karma.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so you kind of find the equilibrium of the thing.
So if one guy agreed with you and turned out to be like an AI safety genius with like 10 karma, then you get like 10 votes for your original thing.
Exactly. And so like, it's a little bit, the Less Wrong thing supports better the idea that people can like change and develop. And maybe as you learn more, then you should deserve to get more voting power or something. Whereas this is like kind of time invariant, like votes you make at any point in time are all treated the same. There's pros and cons to each approach, but I find that like it's a bit more motivating to me as a new user, that I know that the things that I do, even if they're not fully counted now, they will be fully counted later. And so like it's worth engaging even when you have no karma, on the assumption that you'll get some later.
Yeah, now I want to like make a bunch of like explanations and get a bunch of karma.
Right. Yeah.
Later.
And the karma is stamps. Oh, I was going to ask, Stampy, how many stamps am
Just
I
live
worth?
demoing Stampy.
I am just going to DM Stampy. How many stamps am I worth?
Private DM to Stampy.
I'm worth 2,758.93 stamps. It says here.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, okay. There's that's gone up so much. I don't check it because I don't care about the karma on my own Discord. But
How
like,
much people stamp you?
yeah. Well, no. So the thing is, I kind of lied, or I oversimplified. I've like set myself as the source of truth in this system. So like, it's not exactly this like completely open web. It's more like a tree structure with me at the root. So it's like people who know what they're talking about, according to people who Rob thinks know what they're talking about, right? Just to provide some ground truth. I think you can just solve for the thing without and just let it find its equilibrium without that, but I wanted to provide it with some ground truth.
The raw baseline.
Yeah. But the other thing is like you can change it, right? Like that number is not fixed. It's the result of a calculation. And so if I decide, so for example, one thing we have here is like a decay factor. So like if I stamp you and you stamp someone else, that shouldn't really be like a full stamp from me, right? There's some it's like partial transitivity. If I trust that you know what you're talking about, that means I also trust that you can recognize when other people know what they're talking about, but maybe not 100%. So I think we have that set to like 0.9 right now. And so it kind of fades off as it goes out through the system. But that's a free parameter that you can set wherever you want to be like, do we want it to be very tightly focused on like my take on what's a good explanation? Or do we want it to be like more democratic? You can increase that transitivity to have the karma spread more widely through the system.
It's kind of a decay in reinforcement learning, but instead of having like the reward being like multiple steps, it's just like how far are you from robbing the tree?
Right, exactly. And in the code, we do call it gamma for the same reason, yeah.
Right. So I did like ask some questions on Discord. I did talk to Stampy about things, and I mostly like asked like what were good questions to ask you today.
Oh yeah.
And they seem to be pretty interested in like explanations of things. But I also asked stuff on Twitter, and on Twitter people were mostly interested in AI timelines and those kind of things.
Yeah.
So you talked about like AlexNet being like 10 years ago. And you have this T-shirt where you are, I believe.
Oh, I'm on there.
You are here. Right?
There I am.
So yeah, I wanted to, get your feelings on this shot because I asked some people on the podcast about it, and maybe I could just like start with like one tweet you made a few days ago. People keep asking me how optimistic I am about our rate of progress in AI, and I have no idea what they're actually asking. Progress seems very fast. I am not optimistic.
Yeah. This is like a recurrent thing. People use optimistic to mean like fast progress, and like, I mean, yeah. If you have the default assumption that that all new capabilities are like positive, then sure. That's not where I am. So yeah, I'm probably about. I think maybe I should be on the other side of Jack Clark there. I feel like.
Yeah, by the way, if I misrepresented your views and did something wrong, I know I've corrected the thing. And sorry, Jack Clark, I know it's not your actual position.
Yeah, I was wondering about that actually, yeah.
So I think he said something like on Twitter being like 50-50 on like AGI being good or bad.
Okay.
Meaning like, us like surviving it.
So that was like in response to seeing this?
Right.
So he's like, put me on that middle axis.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, no, put me on that, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think I'm closer to like Yudkowsky and Leahy and stuff as far as bad is concerned.
So would you consider yourself a scale maximalist?
No. I mean, I don't know. How would you define a scale maximalist?
You think that you can get AGI by mostly scaling our current system. So some people say like just scaling, but I guess like it's just about details. Like if you count like new, data loaders or like new tricks, like some Gato tokenization or something as a trick, then no, you need like to do maybe like more small tricks, but like no like fundamental like architectural change to get to AGI. At least I would say like a scale maximalist gives it more than like 50% or maybe 30%. Like so you just like consider this as a possibility at least.
I do consider it a possibility.
I think like maybe scale maximalist would be like more than 50%.
Yeah. Like maximalist is a strong term, right? I think. What do I think? It's plausible to me that if you keep piling on scale and small tricks, you get AGI. But you might have to do that for quite a long time. And I think realistically, people are still doing fundamental ML research as well. And so like whether or not we strictly speaking need new theoretical breakthroughs, we'll probably get some, and it will probably be one of those that actually tips us over, even if maybe we could get there eventually just by tweaks.
Those tweaks might give us more efficiency, maybe which will be like a new scaling law or something that will like make us win or lose, I don't know, 1 or 2 years.
Yeah. So I think like it wouldn't surprise me that much if we get a new thing on the general scale of the transformer, right? Like a concept with equivalent significance as attention. It's better, like if your timelines are like over decades, you look at like the rate at which these things happen, we should expect to have another few of those over the next few decades, right?
Maybe it's already here. Like maybe it's in a NRS paper, and like some people read it. Like the transformer paper was like 2017, and it's like really big with the GPT-3 paper, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you should expect like a delay between like when the stuff is out and when people like actually reading it and using it all the time.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. And like, I don't know, candidates for this include getting some fundamental insight into the architecture of the neocortex, for example. It seems like that's achievable. People are looking into it. If we can figure out in better detail the precise like structure of a neocortical column and then have something inspired by that, it might just perform better. I don't know, these kinds of things. Or also a lot of things that are like not exactly tricks. They're not tricks on the scale of like, let's think step by step, but they're like tricks on the scale of like, I don't know, things like that Socratic AI paper. You go, oh, okay, we have all these different models, but they all have this common modality of English text. Can we build an architecture that allows you to kind of combine these capabilities and get something more general and more versatile by having different modules that communicate with each other through text? That feels like the kind of thing that, I don't know where you're drawing that. I don't think there's a clear boundary between tricks and like new architectures, really. It's a continuum.
Did you update a lot on this like Socratic model where it could like, interact with different modalities and texts?
Yes, absolutely. Because that's the kind of thing that I've been thinking about for a long time. I've been thinking about like multi-agent theories of mind seem basically correct. Or like the idea that your mind is actually made up of some number of possibly dynamically changing and adjusting entities, whatever, that each have some degree of agency that come into play in different times and interact with each other is like kind of fake, but it seems as fake as the idea that you have like a unified self.
Is the idea mostly the same as like in psychology with the internal family systems?
That kind of thing, yeah. I think internal family systems introduces a whole bunch of extra details that it can't support or something like that. But like the core concept of like that people's minds are made up of parts that don't necessarily agree with each other at all times or want the same thing at all times accounts for all sorts of aspects of human behavior and irrationality and so on.
Now, in the case of AI, you don't really have multiple agents. You have like one. Well, you have like multiple networks. Maybe I haven't read this Socratic models paper.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it in too much detail. But
maybe you
like,
shouldn't talk about it on that public.
Yeah, probably. So this is not like, I'm not saying that the Socrates model is doing this specifically, but just broadly speaking, the idea of like having separately trained or separately designed sort of components cooperating together through some kind of shared workspace seems pretty powerful to me. It's not like the Socrates thing, I think, isn't differentiable. So like, I don't think you can train it end to end. I don't know. I shouldn't talk about this because I haven't actually read the paper properly. So yeah.
No worries. I think this podcast is about getting your inside views and your kind of feelings or understanding about something. Not we're not talking about like extremely detailed research. But yeah, I guess like what you can talk about is mostly like your impressions of the progress we've been seeing, and maybe like how you think about how to update your models on this. So, for instance, some people like Connor Leahy seem to think that we can just like update all the way, bro, and see when evidence maybe the neural scaling laws in 2020 and just like anticipate future progress and have like very short timelines. Or I guess like for my part, I mostly like see like one breakthrough every Monday, and I'm like, oh, maybe this is what we're going for now. This is the rate of progress now. How do you kind of think about those things? Do you just like go on Twitter and are impressed every time you see something new?
Yeah. So we are progressing in line with my explicit models from years ago. And what's changed primarily is that my gut is catching up to where my sort of explicit system 2 reasoning already was. Like if you had asked me to look at it, whatever it is, 5-10 years ago, I'd been like, well, I don't know, like Kurzweil has some nice graphs and like it certainly looks exponential. And so like in the absence of any specific reason to think something else is going to happen, I guess it's exponential curve and that goes vertical at like 2045 or whatever it is. And so I guess 2045. But my gut was like, this is kind of wild. I have pretty wide error bars on every stage of this reasoning. Who knows? But like one mistake is like having wide error bars in one direction. Actually, if you have wide error bars, that spreads you out either side, right? Yeah, maybe it's later than 2045, maybe it's earlier. And so I feel like we're now on the part of the exponential curve where it feels exponential.
It does. I think one thing Kurzweil uses to talk about, exponential progress, like low alpha-accepting returns, is that at one point you have so much progress. Like the singularity is defined, I think, when humans are not able to follow what's going on. So there's like new advances, new technology being developed, and like we cannot read the New York Times fast enough.
Yeah, and we're already there.
We're already there for AI advances, maybe, or if we're not there now, maybe we're going to be there like in a year.
Yeah. And the other thing that makes the singularity concept valuable to me is like they say it's like the point past which you can't forecast. And a lot of it comes down to the prediction gets way noisier because noise, like when you're following the Industrial Revolution, let's say, you're talking about the development of the steam engine or whatever. If Trevithick has like an accident and he can't work for a couple of weeks, let's say, this doesn't affect the timeline of anything, right? Whereas like if there's a new breakthrough every Monday and somebody just like gets a cold and can't work for 2 weeks, then that's like actually meaningful differential progress, where like the thing they were working on comes out 2 weeks later, and coming out 2 weeks later matters because like the order, it's like, does this capability happen before or after we find out how to like adequately control that capability or like whatever it is.
Right.
It gets to the point where like being fast or like short time scales become actually consequential. And that's like, yeah, I'm just realizing how horrifying that is for my release schedule.
Okay,
that's really rough.
That's the real point. Is like,
oh boy,
how do you make videos that take 8 months when the timeline is so short?
Yeah. I'm trying to speed up. It's difficult.
The right question to ask is, how many Robert Miles videos will we see before AGI?
Oh, that's a fascinating question.
I predict 10.
You think 10?
I have short timelines.
Depends what counts as a video. Like if these shorts and things count, I think it's going to be a lot more than that. But yeah, I hope to have covered the basic concepts of AI alignment theory before the end of the world.
You were saying something early on about how you plan to like hire more people.
Yes.
Are you currently interviewing or taking any application?
Yeah. So I did a thing a while ago of like looking for editors and found some candidates, and I've been working with a couple of people, and that's been pretty good. And I'm now looking at hiring writers, like script writers. because script writing is the thing that takes the longest, but it's also very, I have very high standards for the writing is the core of the thing, right?
Maybe they can do like the research beforehand.
Yeah. I need to study a little bit more about like how to do this. But I think a lot of it is just like coming to terms with being of like having a significant impact on the landscape or something. Like the attitude I take to my channel psychologically has not changed that much since I had, I don't know, 10,000 subscribers, right? And so like now I have 10 times as many subscribers, and certain aspects of my like approach presumably should be multiplied by 10 times, right? Maybe not all of them, but some of them. And I don't think I've changed anything by 10 times in terms of like how worthwhile it is for various people to work with me, right? This is just like imposter syndrome stuff. But like, I still have this feeling of like, well, anyone who's able to help me with writing needs to be a person who like has a good, firstly is like a really good writer. Secondly, has a really good understanding of the problem or can acquire it. And then part of me is like, and so if that's like a pretty impressive and high consequence person who like, why would they waste their time helping this like YouTube channel, right?
So now that you have like 10 times more subscribers, if you just like look at the numbers, you might want to have like a higher standard for people that will help you will actually be competent.
Yeah. Basically just feeling that my project is worth it for people. But the other thing is like, with imposter syndrome, you're saying no for other people, right? You're not even asking them. You're like assuming that their answer is no. Whereas the thing to do is to respect that they are adults who understand what their time is worth and give them the option and let them decide if they want to work with you or not, right?
The number of people I've talked to will just say, why don't we give more money to Robert Matt? Why don't we just like hire more people to help him? Right.
And yeah, it's hire a therapist.
Why hire a therapist when you have Stampy? You can talk to him.
Stampy is very sarcastic and unhelpful. And no, this is like a thing. Oh man, I have all of these takes on chatbots. Can we talk about chatbots for a bit?
Sure, let's go for it.
Have you noticed that chatbots have like not taken over the world? Oh wait, that's a stupid phrasing. Chatbots have like not had hardly any impact.
I did try a chatbot during COVID when I was like feeling a bit down. It was really bad. He would just say like, hey, have you tried this thing? I'm like, yeah. And every day was like, oh, have you tried this like technique of how to like debug your thoughts? And I was like, yeah, I read a book about it.
Right. Yeah, it's like I wouldn't be here if I hadn't. But you know, you're not most people. But like more broadly speaking, I think people in the past would have been like, I don't know, looking at Eliza, right? Like we had enormous success with chatbots in like the 60s and enormous work on them since. And yet they haven't really like reached wide deployment and not really used for anything. And I think this is like largely because people keep trying to use them in the wrong way. They keep trying to put them in one-on-one conversations. They're not very good in one-on-one conversations.
Or chatbots are so good that we don't even know that they're like populating the entirety of Twitter.
I mean, I have suspicions. But like, there's just, it frustrates me. People keep putting chatbots in one-on-one conversations where they're trying to be helpful to you. And this like keeps failing because the bots are not very smart. They say stupid things because they don't know what to say and they're not able to help you. And so then they just seem stupid. So rather than one-on-one conversations where they're trying to help you, they should be in group conversations where they're not trying to help you. Group conversations where they're like kind of rude and sarcastic, actually. So in a group conversation, rather than like in one-on-one, if you say something, the bot has to say something, even if it has nothing to say, right? And so it's speaking because it has to say something. In a group conversation, the bot can speak because it has something to say, right? It can just sit there and watch the conversation and be kind of thinking about things that it might say and just jump in if it actually has something that it's confident is relevant to add.
Maybe it's the same problem with humans. Maybe when we talk one-on-one, we just like think of things to say. We just like listen and be in a group and say like, oh, I have a joke here.
It's a harder problem, right? I think a lot of people find this, that group conversations are easier because if you don't have anything to say, you don't have to say anything. Same thing with chatbots. Secondly, if the bot doesn't know, like say you say something to a bot and it doesn't know what you meant, right? In a one-on-one where it's trying to be helpful, it has to like try to be helpful despite not knowing what you meant. This is very difficult.
Sometimes it says like, oh, I'm not sure I understood this. Can you rephrase it?
Right, and it sounds stupid. Whereas if there's no premise that the thing is trying to be helpful, it's very hard to tell the difference between someone who can't help and someone who doesn't want to help. And so like, if it doesn't understand you, it can be like, what the hell are you talking about? Right? It can like be rude, or it can just like make a stupid offhand joke, or yeah, just like, and so like Stampy is pretty mean a lot of the time. Like I wrote him this way. He's mean. He'll make fun of you. He's kind of an asshole, and that's cool because it just means that like whenever he doesn't know what to say, he can just like disguise it. People do this too, right? There's a lot of people who disguise the fact that they're stupid by being mean. It doesn't work as well as they think it does.
I think this was a thing on GPT-3 when Nick Camarata wrote some like prompt engineering for when the AI didn't know anything about what it was saying. It would say,
"Be real."
This is bonkers.
Yeah.
Be real, yeah.
Yeah, be real.
Be real.
Yeah, that's a fun hack. So why were we talking about this? I forget.
Chatbots. You want to talk about chatbots and why chatbots are pretty bad.
Yes, and why people are misusing them. But having a bot in your group chat that will just jump in. So like, or the other thing is things like Siri or like Google, OK Google or whatever, Google Home. They don't jump in because it's just really hard for them to like hear what's going on in group conversations. And also, I guess people don't like the idea of being listened to in those situations. But in a group chat, it's all text, it's all legible. And I really want in all of my group chats there to be, well, not all of them, many of them, for there to be a bot that just like, if you ask a question that is Googleable, right? Like say you and I are talking about, oh, we're going to record a podcast, whatever. Maybe we're not here in person. And you say, oh, well, how is 2 p.m.? And I say, oh, what's that in UK time? I want the bot to just jump in, right? Because he knows that's a Googleable thing. Or like, I want to, yeah, should we get a pizza? Are there any pizza places around here, right? The bot knows this.
And the bot delivers fast delivery pizza. Yeah,
I mean, like you can be as smart or as dumb as you want to be, but like on the base level, just acknowledging that there's something that the software can do here and then intervening. This is so not relevant. This was like a hobby horse that I've had for a while, since like before I was aware of like actually important problems in the world. This is like part of why there's an alternate world where I am like running a chatbot startup instead of doing what I'm doing now.
You can still go in this world.
Yeah, I don't know how much demand there's going to be in a like post-AGI situation.
You do a chatbot that like helps you understand better AI safety concepts.
Yeah, so that is the dream, right? That is like where we want to go with Stampy. So at first, Stampy, thank you for getting us back on track. At first, Stampy was this bot, this like fairly basic bot that would just like pull the questions from the thing and post them. And then I kept adding more and more, like it's got this really cool like module system. You write these different modules, and when answers come in, the different modules kind of bid on like, oh, I think this is something I can deal with. And it only does as much computation as it needs. They kind of like allow each other to interrupt, and it's like a whole thing. It's on GitHub if you want to like help develop a Stampy. But yeah, I kept adding functionality to make Stampy do all this fun, useful stuff in the Discord, and he has a bunch of functionality. He'll like search the alignment forum for you. He has the transcripts of all of my videos. So like when you're answering questions, like a question comes in about a thing and you can be like, Stampy, wasn't there a Rob Mars video where he's talking about like an AI doing a backflip or something? And Stampy will be like, yeah, here it is. And just like give the link, that kind of thing.
Stampy.
Yeah. So he's like helpful in that respect, but he's helpful on his own terms.
Did you have to go through like all the videos and like edit the transcript yourself?
No, I just used YouTube's automatic transcription, just downloaded all of those. YouTube DL, pretty easy. And like the alignment newsletter, he's got all of those, and he'll like search various things. Wolfram Alpha, he's got like the Wolfram Alpha API, so you can ask him how many calories there are in a cubic meter of butter or whatever, if you wanted to know. I lost my train of thought. Where was I going with this?
So you were going to like Stampy useful. You can have Stampy that like helps people learn AI safety.
So Stampy started off. He started off literally just relaying the questions and answers and maintaining the karma system. Then I added a bunch of these things just to make him like more helpful in the process of like understanding of like looking things up in a group conversation. And that's the other thing that's really nice, right? If you and I are having a research group conversation, there's a really common trope where like you're like, I definitely read a paper about something, and then like you go off and Google it, and then you find the link and bring it back and paste it, right? And just having a bot in the chat that you can be like, give us a link to that archive paper about blah, right? Give us the scaling laws paper, and the bot just posts it, and then the whole process is like all in line in the chat, and we both see it happen. It's just like a really nice workflow that I want to have more widely available. But anyway,
I feel like our society is slowly transitioning to those kind of things. Like I think with Slack, they started like having those bots in this conversation where you could just like slash them.
Right. But the thing I don't like about that is like, there's this tool agent dichotomy, right? This is the thing that original Clippy, famously broke. Is like, is your software a tool or is it an agent? Tools, you want to be consistent, predictable, reliable. You are using the tool to do a thing. Agents can surprise you, right? Agents can do things off their own back. And
so you want to have an agent?
Yeah, like, well, you have to do it right? Like if you have so Clippy was stupid because it was like Microsoft Word is clearly a tool, right? And trying to do agent stuff badly with Microsoft Word is like, this is what Clippit was, right? It would like try and do things and help you out. And it's like, unless it knows exactly what you want, it's not helpful.
It looks like you're trying to open a new page.
Yeah, it's like, just fucking do it then. Leave me alone. People found Clippy horrifying, I think, for this reason, right? He like blurred those boundaries and did a bad job. And like when you have an agent in a chat, or rather when you have a bot in a chat, and in order to address the bot, you have to like use a special syntax. That's basically you've like made a command line program that it is present in your chat. And it's much more agenty. And that's like much more tooly. And that's nice in a sense because it's like predictable and whatever. But I prefer when bots are addressed with like pure natural language. And so like Stampy, almost none of Stampy's commands are like, you have to use this precise syntax. I have these regular expressions that are like as permissive as I think I can get away with. Like as long as you use this word somewhere in the sentence, like you can say Stampy, if you start or end your thing with Stampy, he'll know it's at him. Or if you reply to one of his comments, or if you at him anywhere in the thing, then he like will respond to that because it's directly at him. But there's not like a specific like / Stampy blah this command or whatever. You ask like a human question, which is like, wasn't there a paper about this? Or like, I think there was a, what do you know about blah? And he'll like look it up on the alignment forum, wiki or whatever. And that's the kind of thing you can say, what do you know about X? And because I have this module system, a bunch of modules will respond to that and they have priority. So like if it finds something in the alignment forum, that's like high priority. If it finds something by Googling, that's like lower priority. If it doesn't know what to do with any of those, then there's like Eliza will just like take a swing at like rephrasing the thing you asked as another question or whatever, or like make some rude remark. And so I keep losing what I'm talking about.
Right. So basically the thing, if you can like access it through using regex, and it should like look up useful information ranked by, if they're on the Alignment Forum or Wikipedia.
Yeah. And so I just think it's nicer if you can talk to them as though they're people. I prefer that as an interface. But anyway, we keep getting sidetracked from like where I was actually going with this. At first, Stampy was very simple, right? Now he has a bunch of extra functionality. The dream is, with language models going how they are, and like large language model based conversation agents, things like Lambda. The technology is advancing now where I think that there's the potential for
consciousness.
There's the potential for. We could talk about that if you like, but
So that a joke.
Yeah, I made a video about it. It's not as interesting as everybody seems to think it is. But so there's the potential for something where we have like a giant corpus of, hopefully a giant corpus of like a very large number of questions people have asked about AI safety and high quality human authored responses. You then use that. Probably you don't fine tune on it. You probably do something cleverer, like one of these architectures. Like there was one, what was the like trillion tokens thing
Palm
recently? And see, like, wouldn't it be nice? It's not Palm, I don't think.
Oh, a trillion one.
Yeah. See, if Stampy was here, just like over there, be like, what was that? There was like a paper that was like something, learning from something with a trillion tokens. And he'd be like, here it is. It's a link. Things where like rather than basically you want to get around this whole like memorization thing, right? That like large language models are just transformers, they memorize an enormous amount of the data set, and this is kind of a waste of parameters. What you actually want is a system that can dynamically look up from anywhere in the data set what it needs and do kind of the like there's like a hacky thing you can do with GPT-3 where you give it, and Stampy does this to some extent. You give it the question, it uses that with some kind of semantic search on its data set to get some text, and then it just loads that text into the prompt. It just like stuffs the prompt with stuff from its data set, so that then when it generates, it like has more context that's directly relevant from the data set without having to have memorized it. It hasn't, rather than memorizing the data set, it learns a procedure for searching for things in the data set.
So it knows that the data set contains like Alignment Forum, and so it will put stuff in the prompt that says Alignment Forum. Yeah.
So like you ask it, let's say I ask Stampy a question in this kind of format. There's a bunch of just like standard, maybe it's like language model based semantic search to look through stuff we already have, maybe even search engines, and pull in some relevant information. And then the prompt is like, here's the conversation, the human asked this, the bot then did a search for relevant information and found the following. Using this information, it replied completion, right? And then it's like able to use this data without having to have memorized it.
So it knows like all the question answering from the internet.
Right. So that's the hope. The hope is one day, eventually, when we have a nice set of these questions and answers, we could then have a bot where you could just like go onto Stampy.ai, and instead of it being like an FAQ, it's just like a chat, a text box. You can have a conversation with Stampy, and Stampy will tell you about the various problems, and he can answer your questions. We can't do that right now because language models make things up constantly, and it's like you can't just present language model completions as though they have any kind of authority behind them because, the system has a tendency to make things up. But if you can get good enough at being like constrained to say things that accord with the human written answers that you already have, then you can get something that's more conversational than just like, here is a pre-written answer to your specific question.
I think people get a lot of value from just using the GPT-3 API, even if they know that GPT-3 is full of shit sometimes. And
yes,
with the new, DaVinci 002 Instruct GPT, it's less full of shit, right? So it gives like meaningful answers. So I feel like if you put the Stampy online, people can use it without like knowing, oh, this is like the ground truth. Oh no, I will post it on Twitter.
Yeah, but don't. I mean, you can't. The more foolproof you make it, the universe will provide you a bigger fool.
Yeah. But now I think I've finally figured out where you're going. So we were talking about why, like, you're building, new, like having some like bot that could like teach AI safety could be good. Like having a chatbot that, give answers to meaningful AI safety questions was useful. And actually, yeah, the end game here is having like Robert Miles, but in language model. So you're trying to like digitalize yourself with something that could like answer all the questions, look at all the papers, and like look at your videos and give like meaningful answers to everything. So basically, you're just like scaling up Robert Miles to like all the possible questions in all the group chats.
Yes, something like that. And like ideally, I would like to not just scale up myself. I would like to, there's some kind of HCH thing. What I actually want is not a simulation of me, but a simulation of me with a bunch of time to think and also group chats open with a bunch of actual like alignment researchers. You know what I mean?
It's called Eleuther AI.
Yeah?
I think they have some like bot there, but I think their bot is kind of sometimes jumps into some conversation and say some like weird and funny things. But there's like some people talking about AI Alignment there.
We should set up a chat between Stampy and this bot. I think that would be funny to see.
I think the guy on Eleuther AI is bone amputee if you're listening to this. If we just switch from talking about Stampy, which is great, but to like how to do good AI alignment research in general, there was like some question on Twitter, which was, imagine a good AI safety outcome. What are your probabilities of reaching it via policy coordination means versus via pure technical AI alignment research? And this is because he wants to know what is the ideal target audience. So if you want to like do more like communication efforts for policy people or more like technical people, what do you think is like the balance between like policy, technical, and what level of abstraction? I think there's a lot of questions to unpack here.
Okay, so asking like, are we going to solve this by policy or are we going to solve this by technical means? It feels like, are we going to solve this problem by writing the program or running the program? Like, well, if we haven't written the program, we've got nothing to run. If we write the program and never run it, we may as well have not written it, right? The technical thing is about, can we find solutions? And the policy thing is like, can we get people to actually use the solutions we've found?
No, the policy thing is about having people not run the AGI.exe.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously they're both important, but they are also like mutually reinforcing is my point, right? If, for example, as part of policy, you were like, maybe we can like slow down capabilities research a little bit. That's cool, but like, all that's doing is buying you time. So you need the technical alignment research to be happening. And like, those are exactly, well, not exactly, but they're like approximately equivalent. If you can double the rate of alignment research or halve the rate of capabilities research, those are like approximately the same thing.
Not really, because right now we have maybe 110,000 times more capabilities researchers than like alignment researchers.
Yeah.
So maybe we want to get more time so that, people can work on this when there's like an actual field doing useful things. So I think like getting like an extra month or an extra 2 months is very important, because then, I don't know, like as I said, like in the last like 2 months, we might do like the most progress we've ever done in AI alignment, right?
Right. Oh, so is your thinking that like the rate of progress in alignment is growing rapidly and therefore additional time is like more than linear in additional research or something like that?
I think we're doing somewhat a good job right now. There's like more people going to the field, and we just need to like scale it up faster. But it's just like, if we tell everyone like, oh yeah, just like do pure technical alignment research now, there's just like not so many people doing it.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's why I do outreach and you do a little bit of outreach as well. It's because I think we just like need more people. Like not everyone have heard the good arguments.
Yeah, we need more people. We need more good people, right? Like I think the rate of progress is primarily determined by, is this true? I mean, we just need more people. But like, I think it's weighted towards the like high quality end, right? Like we need people who are like able to do the highest level work and make progress on the hardest parts of the problem. And having more people, broadly speaking, helps. It's really good to have more people supporting all of that. But yeah, on the margin, it's like you want it weighted by quality in some way.
If you had like more regulation, like an AI alignment tax or something on some companies, like if more companies were like forced to have like alignment researchers, I know we don't currently have enough to put at Google or those kind of places, but at the end of the day, some people might want, some regulations, because I think that's how we fought climate change. We had like carbon tax, those kind of things. I think that's one way if we could get like more people. I think if we just like keep trying to grow it from, effective altruism, that's wrong. We might get to like 1,000 people in 2 years, right? But not more than that.
But the thing is, we understand climate change.
We understand AI as well.
Not really. Like, that's the thing, right? Like, when it comes to climate change, the scientists did the research. They figured out what the mechanism is. It's carbon dioxide. The thing we need to do is release less carbon dioxide, or like figure out ways to remove it from the atmosphere. Then you can pass that on to the regulators and say, like, what can we do? How can we intervene on this to reduce carbon dioxide emissions? And the regulators can like come up with some change in the incentive structures of society and industry to reduce that. With alignment, we don't have that. We are at the point of like, getting very hot around here. What's going on? Right? But maybe we're a bit better than that. But like genuinely, the difficult thing right now is understanding the nature of intelligence well enough to know what we can do that would help. If I could pass a law requiring all of the AI organizations to like implement some specific technical policy, I don't know what specific technical policy I would have them implement, because we don't have that yet.
Some policies, like you need to make your system interpretable so that you can run them on the streets of London.
Yeah. And like, okay, interpretable is good. I'm excited about interpretability research. It seems like an important component. But a component.
I don't mean this as a normative thing. I think that's like a natural thing that people are trying to like pass in like an EU regulation. If you build like deep learning systems and you deploy them on self-driving cars, then you need to make it interpretable.
Yeah.
Jan LeCun was making jokes of the thing because he thinks it's like impossible for deep learning to be fully interpretable. So we talk about like AI safety progress. Another question on Twitter was, what are you most excited about in terms of progress on AI safety recently? You also said that safe AGI is possible.
Mm-hmm.
How sure are you that it is actually possible?
Well, what do you mean by possible?
I'm just talking about this guy on Twitter, but I would say possible means it's possible that we run this and we're not dead. We die at a normal death time.
Right, okay, yeah. So there definitely exists a program, probably a short program. By short, I mean, would fit comfortably on any modern computer. Not would run comfortably, but the code, which is like an AGI superintelligence that's fully aligned, that ushers in a golden era solves all our problems and is perfect and we get the good outcome. That program exists, right? This is because the space of programs is deep and wide and long, and like add 100 billion other words for all of the other dimensions. It's a very high dimensional space, right? Every program is in there. Perfectly aligned AGI is a program that exists and can run on computers that we have now. It's just like, are we going to find it? How do we find it?
A program using deep learning, maybe? I think.
Yeah. And so like deep learning doesn't let us the standard approach of deep learning doesn't allow us to find that program, because In deep learning, we optimize over the input-output behavior of the system, and we optimize over the input-output behavior of the system in the training environment, in the training regime. And you just don't, that just is insufficient. Again, the space is very large. There's a lot of programs that perform very, very well and very safely and very alignedly in the training environment for whatever training environment you create. And you don't know how those behave off distribution, and you can't deploy them without moving them off distribution.
So are you saying that basically in this like giant space, we might end up on something people call mesa optimizers?
Yeah.
You have a video about it.
I do, and I'm happy with that video. That's like, if people are interested in mesa optimizers, they should watch those. 2 videos, yeah.
Maybe you could do like a little finger thing so people...
It's right here, or possibly here, depending on how much space I have in the frame. Yeah, and so like that's one part of it. But like that's like one specific way in which this happens. Is kind of a broader family of these things. There's just a lot of ways that once the thing is out there and it's an AGI and it's like doing its thing, everything changes and you just can't be confident. So, okay. For example, there are a bunch of alignment approaches that are not like sub-agent stable. And so they can like work perfectly and then fall apart later on. Like, say you've got like say you've got an AI system that's we're like training an AGI, and it plays various games, and it we put it in various environments. And suppose that we as human beings, we just have like a real, like we think it's really morally wrong, certain configurations of chess pieces, right? Whatever it is. If like these pieces are in a grid like this shape, then that's like horrible.
Very bad opening.
Very bad. And we don't want that. And we train the thing to play chess, right? We train it to play chess. We also train it as part of our alignment thing, not to do this particular configuration, right? And we're also training it to do a million other things. At some point, it's deployed into the real world, right? Let's say the point at it's like about human level intelligence. So it's like playing chess in the same way that we play chess at sensible human level. But, we also trained it at writing software. We also trained it at, theoretical computer science. We trained it at a bunch of things because we're trying to make an AGI here. At a certain point, possibly in deployment, it realizes that the cognitive architecture that it has is not particularly well suited to playing chess. And if it wants to win at chess, which it does, it should write a program that does like min-max and alpha beta pruning and like whatever. And it's like, it basically just like writes itself stockfish. Or honestly, because realistically, all of these things happen much faster than we expect them to do, it realizes that it can download stockfish, right? One of the two. But suppose it's writing this code. Is it going to include this preclusion against producing this particular configuration, right? No. Maybe, maybe not. Probably not, right? Because depending on like what, and here we have to anthropomorphize, but like you can't tell if you've created a system that like really has an actual deep disagreement, that it actually wants that configuration not to happen, versus just that like when you were training it, whenever it was in that configuration, you gave it like a negative reward. And so it's the equivalent of like you're trying to play chess, and whenever you have that configuration of pieces on the board, you like have a horrible headache. And so you avoid it. But like if looking at that configuration of pieces gives you a horrible headache, that doesn't mean you're going to like try to avoid it from ever being considered in this program that you wrote, right? And so 2 things happen here. Firstly, the system stops having the alignment properties that you thought it had, that it always displayed in the training environment. And secondly, it becomes drastically more competent, right? Because stockfish is like way better at chess than it was before. So you get this simultaneous thing of the system becoming tremendously more capable in a bunch of domains, probably, and simultaneously just not being aligned anymore, according to the things that you thought you'd managed to instill in it in the training process. This is the kind of thing.
Is the problem here that we're like out of distribution because now he's doing other things, or is the problem that, I don't know, he was pretending to do the right thing in the beginning and
Yeah, I mean, is it pretending, or is it like we aren't? So we are meso optimizers with respect to evolution, right? And so what are we doing when we like use contraception, right? We're not like trying to deceive evolution necessarily, but then evolution isn't an agent. I don't know. This is kind of confusing to think about. But like regardless of what its internal experience is, it stops behaving in the kind of aligned way that we trained it to. And like you could call this like self-modification, but it's also, you could also think of it as it's just like moving a bunch of its cognition outside of the part that you originally trained, right? And that's, you would expect that to be true, right? If you have if an AGI has this kind of cognitive morphological freedom that it can just configure its computational resources into whatever structure it thinks is best for the task that it's doing, it's going to have a bunch of these kind of, right? It's going to play chess with a specialized module because that's like cheap to do. And it's going to be way more efficient than trying to reason through with its general capabilities. And so you can expect that kind of for everything. And yeah, you could call this self-modification or self-improvement or whatever. It's or building a sub-agent, right? And either way, just the alignment we don't currently have a way to be confident that the alignment properties hold through that kind of like dramatic shift that you expect should just happen at about the point of human capabilities, when it becomes smart enough to realize that it can and have enough programming ability to do it. And this is, again, like these are all just like different ways that this deep problem can manifest itself. And so like, there's a lot of cool research about how to align our current systems that doesn't solve this problem. And my mainline prediction is that we get alignment stuff that like looks pretty good and works pretty well until it doesn't.
But for now, we haven't seen like any particular example of a misoptimizer in the wild. So for now, it's just like, I guess that the thing exists. Or I
mean, except us.
So, okay, I don't fully buy the evolution analogy. I don't fully understand it either.
Okay.
So I talked to Ivan Ubinger on, I guess, the second episode of this episode. We talked about evolution. People told me that I didn't understand exactly what he was saying. But I guess my understanding is that as humans, we somewhat do something for evolution in the sense that like our brain like maximize some like dopamine or any like neurotransmitter in our brain because it thinks that this will maximize, our ability to like be strong, be healthy, survive, and maybe have kids at the end. So we as humans think like, oh, we're doing like something like crazy. We're just like falling in love, watching movies, doing YouTube videos. But at the end of the day, our brain really wants to reproduce. So we don't actually change from the ancestral environment. We're still doing offspring thing, but we just like believe that we're doing something great. But it's just like falling in love is just like a good thing to maximize long-term reward of more offerings because
yeah, no, I think that you're collapsing meta layers here. That like you're talking about what your brain thinks and also what you think. And I don't believe that your brain thinks anything that you don't think. I
am my brain.
You are your brain. And so if your claim is that your brain is like actually thinking about inclusive genetic fitness, then like you should have thoughts about inclusive genetic fitness, and like you don't. You have thoughts about like sex is fun, right? Like this is not, although you have the capacity to think about inclusive genetic fitness, this is not in fact the computation that you're carrying out when you decide to do the various things you do in your life.
Why do I think sex is fun? I think sex is fun because my brain produces some neurotransmitter whenever I'm doing it, because my brain has evolved throughout the evolution. It was good to like release this particular thing to make me do more offspring, right? The concept of fun depends on like what the brain produces.
Yes, this is the link between evolution and your thoughts goes via this thing, right? But you aren't making your decisions based on thoughts about what evolution wants.
Yeah, my claim is more that phasic dopamine in the brain gives that, it's kind of similar to like a reward and reinforcement learning, right? So it's kind of the like reward that trains the neural net that's in my brain. And in some sense, evolution has created this reward system, and my brain changes over time based on this reward that I'm getting. So I don't think there's like an actual like agent that is like, oh, what is the most fun? What is the meaning of life? I think it's just like some neural net that learns stuff through like RL or deep learning, and at the end of the day, ends up with like some policy. The policy is not great, but the policy is not like thinking like explicitly about evolution, but it's kind of it has been trained by something that like was created by evolution.
Yes, and therefore it's correlated. And they're definitely correlated, but they're not the same. And the differences become larger the more power we have, right? And it's in that delta where you lose everything. It's Goodhart's law again, right? And this correlation was much, much stronger in the ancestral environment than it is now. But like the optimal inclusive genetic fitness route is something that almost nobody does, right? And what's more, the other thing is it's like completely computationally intractable, right? Of course we're approximating something like inclusive genetic fitness because you can't do that computation, right? You have to use heuristics. We're like so bounded in that respect. And that's all it is. They're different things. And if we have the freedom to configure the universe however we want it to be, we get further away from inclusive genetic fitness. And what's more, this is like, it's completely that like the argument from inclusive genetic fitness is so unconvincing. Like you could say to me, hey, you should put all of your resources and all of your life priority into like donating sperm and like just trying to like have as many offspring as possible, right? And you can make an argument about that, about how many offspring I would end up having and my relative inclusive genetic fitness and how that would be enormous. And I don't give a shit, right? That's not what I want. I don't want that. I want something else.
We want more kids, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm like pro-natalist, but they're not like a terminal thing. They're not the only thing that matters. And as far as evolution is concerned, it's the only thing that matters. And like we care about other things. And so, yeah, you end up with AI systems that just care about things that aren't human values.
Okay, so I think I kind of can make a general like Steelman argument of something you're saying. And I think I see where we're disagreeing.
Okay.
So basically, you're kind of at the individual level, where you're saying that a human is misaligned with evolution.
Yeah.
A specific human is not like thinking explicitly in terms of like maximizing offsprings, and we're pretty bad at it individually.
Yeah.
I guess my claim.
But we're not just we're bad at it, we're not trying to do it.
We're not trying to do it at all. So I guess like that's a good analogy for AI. So the AI could have like some different like objective than the one in training. So I agree with that. I guess my general claim is that humanity as a whole is pretty good at maximizing survival or getting like, and I feel like what evolution was at the beginning, it was like kind of please survive.
Yeah.
So we're getting like good at like making things, building technology. And so we're kind of like being good at like the goal of like surviving somehow.
Yeah, we want to survive. We want to survive for a few reasons. One of them being evolution. The other one is instrumental convergence, right? If you want, well, yeah, whatever you want. Surviving is probably a better way of getting it than not surviving. And of course, evolution is still happening, right? It's not as though every gene is equally prevalent in every generation of humans. Evolution is happening. It's just that evolution is very, very slow compared to us. So evolution doesn't have a lot of time to do whatever it's going to do before we finish doing what we've been doing for the last 200-300 years of just like completely in an instant from the perspective of evolution, diverting the path of the world to what we want instead of what it wants.
And it's kind of weird because at some point it's not really an agent anymore. At some point we just can change our genes and create kids as we want. So at some point, like, evolution will kind of disappear.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it would like change drastically, but it's changed before. The evolution of like random RNA molecules is pretty different from like multicellular sexual selection, whatever. There will always be, as long as there's competition, there will be selection pressures. And I mean, talk to Robin Hanson about that, right? But the question of like, do we want to expand into the stars? It's like, well, as long as some of us do, then that's what's going to happen for those people, and anyone who stays behind can, if they want, and become mostly irrelevant,
Do you want to go into the stars?
I honestly don't expect to live that long, but yes, if I could, yeah.
And it's a great transition to another Discord question. Are we doomed? What's your probability of doom?
I don't know. I think it doesn't look good. It's fair to say it doesn't look good. Like, my mainline prediction is doom. Like, if I think about the coming years and I just assume that the single most likely, like if I do a greedy path through this, where at every instance the single most likely thing to happen happens, I think we're doomed. There are various places where various unlikely things can happen that might lead to us not being doomed.
What are those like concrete paths to not doom?
Well, we might have some deep breakthrough on the kind of problems that I've been talking about that points to a way to do alignment that will actually hold up under this under these extreme circumstances of AI superintelligence. That's like the main one. I also place a bunch of probability. I don't know, maybe 10 or 20% probability on just us being really wrong about something really fundamental in the lucky direction. And I place pretty high probability on us being really wrong about some important philosophical thing. It's just that there's no particular reason to believe that makes us less doomed rather than more, right? Like, broadly speaking, if you're trying to design a rocket to take you to the moon and you're in some sense badly wrong about how rockets work, this mostly reduces your chances of getting to the moon.
But we're talking about aligning rockets. Then we can be wrong about how easy AGI is.
Yeah, right. Some kind of thing where you could imagine some situation where we have some argument where it's and then when we get to the moon, we'll fly down to the surface with this plane type thing. And some people being I don't know if that's going to work. I'm pretty sure there's no air on the moon. And other people being well, yeah, okay, but we'll include the wings just in case. And we do. And then it turns out we were super wrong about the moon somehow, and it has an atmosphere and the wings help. Right?
Right.
That kind of thing. We can be wrong about the reasons why some of our approaches won't work. But that's I don't want to rely on that.
Maybe the Asimov 3 rules were kind of useful at the end of the day. Maybe it kind of actually worked.
Yeah. I mean, things have shifted a fair amount.
I remember another question was something about timelines. Something if you believe in short AI timelines, it said 5 to 10 years. What's the best way to do AI alignment research or useful work?
That's a pretty deep strategic question, which I do not know the answer to. I think we need a broad approach. I think we're uncertain enough about enough things. The number of people we have working on this problem is so small relative to the breadth of possible approaches. there are, like, if humanity were sane, I mean, a lot of things would be different. That's a wild counterfactual. But like,
There would be no TikTok.
yeah, probably not. How about this? If humanity were allocating a sane level of resources to this problem, in terms of person hours, competence-weighted person hours,
Competence based on either number of stamps, how close you look, how close you match Elliot Yudkowsky profile picture.
yeah, unless we're on comma. I don't know. There would be like large teams of very competent people working on all sorts of different approaches to this. And like, I honestly don't have the confidence to be like, this is the kind of research we should be doing, right? Like, it's totally possible that the thing that if we had enough time to work on this and we worked on it for another 10 years, we would be like, oh, yeah, it turns out the promising avenue is just like not really any of the things that people are currently working on. So we still need more breadth than we have, but we also need way more depth in all of the things we have as well. I just think we need to be putting so much more into this than we are.
How do we get more people, except from, publishing videos more regularly sometimes?
Yeah. Well, that's the approach I'm taking. I think just getting people to understand the problem is huge. Getting smart people to understand the problem is huge. And also getting people to understand how interesting the problem is. This is the thing that blows my mind. AI safety is like obviously the most interesting subject in the world.
I would say the most important problem to be working on. But maybe on a technical perspective, maybe the equations for AI alignment, the current like state where we're in is not the most beautiful math. Maybe like some mathematicians prefer to like work on group theory. Maybe some people prefer to like look at cool DALL-E outputs.
Yeah, fair. I don't mean, what do I mean? I mean, there is a particular type of person who is attracted to a problem more the more difficult it is. Right?
It's called a speedrunner.
Yeah. People who like a challenge in their technical work. And it actually doesn't get harder than this, right? In like current problems, or like plausibly there are harder problems, but like that nobody cares about, that like aren't important. Like if you want a problem that cuts to the core of like all of the most important questions in philosophy, all the most interesting questions in philosophy, questions about ethics, questions about identity, intelligence, consciousness, and values, like axiology, the core questions of like, what are we even doing here? What are we trying to achieve? If we could do whatever we wanted, if we could have whatever outcomes we wanted, what outcomes do we even want? And then all of those questions about like, what does it mean to be a thinking thing in the world? What does it mean to want things? And then all of these technical challenges, right? How do we understand the most complex and confusing things that we've ever created in history? How do we understand the most complicated object known on a deep enough level to replicate it? How do we do this so well, so comprehensively that we avoid destroying ourselves? How do we do this on a deadline? It's interesting.
It is philosophy on a deadline, But the problem is most AI researchers, I think, hated philosophy classes because they didn't have like an actual like solution. And they prefer to like write code and have a correct output.
Yeah, I mean, philosophy has a lot of problems, but like I think philosophy gets a bad rap mostly because it's the bucket into which we put the things that we don't understand well enough to study properly. Like there was a time when philosophers were studying questions like, if I drop a feather and a cannonball, which one is going to fall faster or whatever? And this is like a philosophical problem until you have a philosophical insight like empiricism and go, well, why don't we just fucking do it and see?
And this is, kids, how Nike was created. Just do it.
Just do it. Just like, yeah, have a look. And so my point is like, people sometimes use that to like badmouth philosophy, but like somebody had to come up with that. Turns out that's not obvious. It's obvious in retrospect. People spent decades, possibly centuries, sitting around thinking about how to learn about the world. And the idea of like, maybe try and like think about what would happen and make a prediction and then test it by doing it is like something somebody had to invent. That person was a philosopher and they like made an enormous progress. This is like a huge thing, especially on the internet, of people being like, oh yeah, but that's obvious, that's trivial. It's like, well, you couldn't have told me it before you learned it. So it's like, yeah, it's obvious in retrospect, whatever. But the point is, once you have made these philosophical discoveries such that you actually have like a paradigm with which to learn more and operate, like, you know, then that's science. It's not philosophy anymore, right? It used to be philosophy until we understood it well enough to actually like make progress, and then it split off. And we've seen like increasingly more and more things steadily splitting off from philosophy and becoming, you know, mathematics, becoming the various branches of science. And
is the claim that we need to do some philosophical work to like map out the problems, and then we create like subfields of AI alignment, so then people can like work on this because there's like subfields of AI and not just like someone talking on that's wrong.
Right. The job of philosophers of AI, like the job of firefighters, is to make themselves redundant, right? Their job is to grapple with the ineffable until you're able to F it.
They're already out of job because there is no fire alarm.
So the point is, we want to do, so the job of the philosophical work is to become not confused enough, right, to reach a level of understanding of the thing that we can do maths on it, for example, or computer science. And yeah, the philosophy side of things is, we don't want it to stay philosophy, right? We want to like graduate to the point where we actually have like ways to make progress on the actual problem.
How would you like advise people to do more philosophy on AI? Should people just like read less wrong? Should people like watch your videos and become philosophy PhDs?
I don't know. I don't know that I have specific advice about that. Like there's some fun. So there's a whole area of research, or like a sort of family of research that I quite enjoy. That's like taking these kind of fuzzy concepts that we're using and just like trying to formalize them to something that you can like prove theorems about. Something like recently I was looking at some work by Alex Turner about formalizing the idea of like power seeking. We have this idea of instrumental convergence that like agents with a wide range of different goals or reward functions will tend to seek power, right? They will try to gain influence over their environment, try to gain resources. And then like, there's like a philosophical argument, which Alejandro made, which Bostrom made. And then it's like, okay, what does this mean concretely? How could we prove this? How could we prove this like mathematically or in computer science as opposed to in philosophy? And that means like taking all of these words and turning them into like Greek symbols. No, you need like really, really concrete definitions. So you need to like specify exactly what you mean by everything, such that there's like no remaining ambiguity about what you're talking about. And then you can start proving things. And it turns out you can in fact prove that optimal policies in a wide range of like MDP environments exhibit this behavior that is like this formalized concept of what it means to seek power, which is, I think, about like the number of possible reachable states.
Oh, so it wants to be able to reach all the states of the MDP. It wants to like be able to like survive and have like power over.
Yeah, not exactly that it wants to reach all of them, because like a lot of the states are like bad outcomes that it doesn't want, right? But it wants its decisions to have an influence over the state of the MDP. So like if you are turned off, then now you're in this one state which is off, and you know on the graph you have like one arrow coming out from off that loops around back to off, and like in principle, there's no like, well, you might think that this is just another state that you could be in, and without actually including somewhere in the goal, don't be in the off state, that this is like, that there would be about as many optimal policies or about as many goals for which the optimal policy involves being turned off as there are that don't. But it turns out, no, there are like many, many, many more goals for which the optimal policy involves avoiding being turned off. And you know, this is provable and has been proven. This like general like family of thing, I think is potentially helpful because it lets you prove. It kind of forces you to be really rigorous and clear on what you're actually saying and what you aren't saying, and you can kind of discover things this way.
So you move from philosophy to math, you try to formalize things in terms of like simple MDP, and so then it forces you to like understand better the problem. And I feel like that's one thing Paul Cristiano is doing a little bit, which is trying to go from, you know, scenarios where AI could destroy humanity or just like have some like misaligned behavior, and then come up with like concrete plans on like how to counteract this. And by doing this like concrete thing, like what is like the most simple problem that could like be misaligned, and then you can like, you know, find the most simple solution to this, and then you can like continue this process until you run out of like actual problems that could come up.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that though, right? So this is like, I don't think that Paul is suffering from this problem, but there is a problem that some people have of like, I can't think of any way that this is dangerous and therefore it's safe. And yeah, no, Paul is not doing that, but like taking that general approach of like, think of a way that it could go wrong and then fix it, and then try and think of another way that it could go wrong and then fix it. It's like, you have to be doing that at the right level of abstraction. Because if you have a system which is not aligned, it's like, think of a way that this might not be aligned and fix it, as opposed to like, think of something an unaligned system, a misaligned system could do and prevent it from being able to do that. That approach is like, I think, a losing proposition.
So it's not about like agents not being able to do something bad, like power taking. It's mostly like, imagine we're running like the simulation we're actually in, and what would be the kind of AIs people build? And in those scenarios with like those architectures, what would be like the obvious thing that could go wrong? What would be like the kind of things people could develop that could like lead to like a failure case?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good approach. But also, I don't know what I'm talking about.
What's Rob's approach to it?
What's my approach? What, to the problem more broadly?
Yeah, how do you like think about the kind of problems we could have? I know you said something about like meta optimizers being kind of a big chunk of what you think we're doing. Like you said something like it's...
Yeah, there's like a broader thing of which mesa optimizers are like a particularly concerning or salient example.
Do you have like other things in your threat model? Other ways of coming up with like dangerous plans, or you mostly just like read Alex Turner and Paul Cristiano and think about their models?
I mean, I try to read a wide variety of stuff, but it's difficult. There's a lot being published now. The other thing is like, if I'm trying to be sort of an introduction to the field for people. I don't want to be too specifically opinionated about what types of research I think are promising. Like, firstly, because like, who the hell am I, right? I have this like disproportionate visibility and disproportionate respect, to be honest, right? Like, people care more about what I have to say than they should.
Well, I think people in the alignment community don't treat you as more respectful than, I don't know, the people who like created the field.
No, yeah, absolutely not.
And I guess people on YouTube are just like excited about your videos and just like respect you for like how useful you are to them. So I think in that sense, you're at the right level.
I think people outside of the field think that I have more, what am I saying? People outside of the field tend to think that I'm like actively doing research, right? And like, I decided to focus on communication instead of doing research because I thought I would have a lot more impact that way. And that seems to be the case. But then they want to hear my like object level opinions about all of these research questions. And like, I'm not the person to ask.
My take is that if you're like a researcher working on like one paper, you end up like maybe doing research on like this very specific thing for like 6 months or a year. And you go into like this rabbit hole of being like the person to talk about for cooperative investment learning. But if you've done like 20 videos or 40 videos on AI safety, you have like a broader range of topics. And if you like had to like explain those topics very precisely in like a 5 minute video, then you end up like having a good understanding of those topics. So maybe you're the person to talk to when it is about, you know, the beginner concerns about AI safety. Maybe not the like high level questions.
Yeah, okay. Perhaps like I do have like a broader understanding than some, but I also think that like most researchers, yeah, they know it's like most researchers know everything about one thing and a bit about everything else. And I just know a bit about everything, right? So like, I think my understanding of a randomly chosen topic is like not better than the understanding of like a randomly chosen alignment researcher about a randomly chosen topic that isn't their own. I'm really just like trying to communicate it to the outside world, you know?
Yeah, I think it's fair enough to think that people should, you know, go to a specific researcher's paper to know like how to act on like this kind of thing, and should not like defer too much on your opinion on this specific thing if you like have not spent like more than 100 hours on this.
And there's also a thing where like, because I'm trying to be like reasonably impartial, I don't like to really give a bunch of specific opinions about that. I've been doing this for years, and the thing that's weird is like, it turns out if you don't give your opinion for long enough, you stop having an opinion. Like, your mind stops generating opinions because you're not using them. And that's like, doesn't reflect very well on me.
Except when you're on a chart and you need to be on a square.
What?
When I'm asking you to be on a chart, then you can tell me like, oh, I'm in this square, not this one. I'm talking about the chart.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah, right. Exactly. That's exactly it. Right. And that was like the first time that I had like thought of myself in these terms of like having an opinion about where these things are. And I had to like decide. But this is like kind of a worrying thing. I think it says a worrying thing about my brain, and like by generalizing from myself, what's that called?
Generalizing from one data point.
Yeah, there's a name for it, as a fallacy or something. Anyway, whatever. From that perspective, about probably a lot of people, that like apparently I mostly form opinions in order to talk about them, not in order to like affect my object level decisions about what I'm doing in my life.
Did you have that before you started doing YouTube? Like, did you have like actual opinions that you concealed them from other people?
No, I didn't have a reason to to like hold back on like giving takes before because nobody cared who I was or what I had to say. So I was free to just chat shit about anything.
And because you don't want to talk about takes and you're not able to express them, I think it's the best moment to ask you when you think we'll get AGI, because it is like the less controversial topic ever. So you will not do any takes.
Sure. January 1st, 2045.
What time is
midnight?
What time zone?
UTC. So like, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm in like the 10 to 20 year range now, but this is not based on like really deep consideration. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want people to over update on that.
We had a bit 30 seconds earlier about like why people should not over update on your thing. So I think you're fine.
Right. But that was about what areas of research are particularly promising, and this is about timelines. Maybe in full generality, don't over update on my stuff. But like, I know if I say something in a video, feel free to update on that as though it's like probably true. But yeah, my like random takes on timelines or whatever is like, yeah.
We could say that timelines is now an active area of research now.
I suppose that's true. Yeah.
So 10 to 20 years. This podcast is called Inside View. So what's your model for predicting this thing? Do you think you can like dig in and think about like why you think those numbers? And maybe another thing we do a lot with on this podcast is just like define things. Maybe you did like 20 videos on Computerphile and your channel about defining AGI. What's the definition you have when I say those words to you? What's the thing you think about?
Well, yeah, I would think about a system that cares about things in the real world and is able to make decisions in the real world to achieve those goals across a very wide range of domains, like a range of domains as broad as humans operate in or broader. Or you could also call it kind of a single domain, which is like physical reality, right?
If we have GPT-5,
yeah,
that is able to like answer all those questions, and maybe 5 is too soon, like let's say 7, and do like basically like all the thinking we do, like be like a human chatbot. Mm-hmm. Would that count as AGI?
I mean, like it's possible that it could, but there's a question of like, is it modeling the world? Is it trying to act in the world? Like,
I have the thing on the t-shirt.
Yeah,
it's like kind of a joke about the goalpost mover, saying something like about anthropomorphizing. Highly critical of anthropomorphism, yet thinks human-level AI will require human-like senses.
Yeah, there's no particular requirement for human-like senses, but you do need to be forming a model of the world, and like maybe it depends on how these things respond with scale, right? Obviously, the actual optimal policy for the language modeling task involves like very deep and detailed simulation. And so like maybe when you say GPT-7, that's what you mean, that we're like so close to that. But I don't know if even all of the text available now and that will be available in the future is like sufficient to get that close to it. This is like an empirical question.
Yeah, I think there's a less strong post about like why we're already bottlenecked by dataset size.
Yeah.
And maybe some companies have a lot of data. They have like Gmail level of data. Mm-hmm. And like if you take into account the number of emails we send every day, that's like enough to train more data than, what we've done with like GPT-3. But yeah, except from like this like private data, if you just like train on the like open internet, we might be like that bottleneck in dataset size as of like current scaling laws.
Yeah, I think that's pretty plausible to me. And like, again, this is a bit like this thing about tweaks, right? Like, it doesn't seem impossible to me that by scaling up the number of parameters, and also, make some algorithmic efficiency improvements, which there are a bunch of them that people are already working on.
Or just like a new H100 NVIDIA GPU.
Yeah, potentially, but that just affects cost mostly. And then somehow there's sufficient data sets to train these things to convergence. Then maybe, but I also think we probably get something else first.
What is something else?
Well, I don't know.
Oh, you mean another breakthrough?
Yeah. Another breakthrough, another architecture, something more, something Gato-ish.
If I'm in Robert Miles' mind, if I try to model and be in your head, I see your tweet about progress seems very fast.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen the same breakthroughs this year, right? Socratic models, Palm, etc.
Yep.
How do we have this current rate of progress for 10 to 20 years? How is it sustainable?
It depends on... Yeah, 20 years is too long.
Is this update in real time?
No, I'm shifting what I say to what I think. A lot closer to 10 years. But I also expect us to start hitting against some limits, right? We are hitting data set size limits already. And that's what makes me think you do need some different approach when it's every piece of text ever generated by humanity. We're starting to approach the limits of what text as a modality can do, maybe?
If Ethan Caballero, the guy I interviewed about scaling laws, was in front of you, he would say, you don't like text? What about YouTube? If I tried trying to predict the next frame in YouTube, there's a bunch of data.
Yep, that's pretty good. That's the next thing to do. That's going to be expensive. Yeah. And then you really want good simulation, I think. You need good simulated environments for physical manipulation of stuff. But there's always this possibility that there is a fairly simple core to general intelligence that you eventually just hit. And it's not at all implausible to me that training something massive to full convergence on everything everyone ever wrote doesn't just find the actual thing that can then just be applied arbitrarily.
Okay, my bold claim is that if we believe scale is what you need, we already found the core stuff to intelligence, which is predicting the next word. And
it's not quite what I mean. I'm talking about that's the task, right? I'm talking about some kind of cognitive structure, some kind of algorithmic structure that is the thing that applies whenever you're thinking about almost anything that you're trying to do.
It's called a transformer.
No, it would be a pattern of the weights of a transformer.
Do we need to really understand it? The thing might emerge from the structure. Sorry, Yudkowsky, if you're watching this, I'm using the word emerge.
Yeah. I think Yudkowsky's objection is that things emerging doesn't explain anything about them particularly, other than that they weren't there and then they were. But I don't think he objects to the concept of things emerging. Yeah, it might. That's what I'm saying. That doesn't seem completely implausible to me.
I think I've run out of questions to ask.
Yeah.
Do you have any last thing you wanted to say or talk about? seem depressed.
Yeah.
Are you sad because we are going to die?
To a first approximation. Yeah. Like, we're not definitely screwed, right?
So how many nines do you have in your probability of doom?
Like 1.5. Like, we're probably screwed. There are ways that we could be not screwed. It's not like this is an unsolvable problem at all. It doesn't seem to me to be dramatically more difficult than various other problems that humanity has solved.
But it's on the first try.
Even including on the first tryness, right? Like, the first time we tried to put people on the moon, we put them on the moon and got them home. Like, we can do hard things on the first try. But yeah, we don't have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of people working on it.
What do you think of like more drastic measures? So I have kind of a bold claim, which is we need more Greta Thunberg of AI alignment. We need like people like shaking people's emotions. Otherwise, we just like go down the streets and show like dolly picture to your Uber drivers, and you're like, oh yeah, pretty good. And nobody like actually understands what's going on. We need like someone to say like to talk to the UN and be like, I don't remember the actual quote from Greta Thunberg. What are you doing?
Right. How dare you?
How dare you?
Yeah.
You just like go in front of like DeepMind and just like, how dare you?
Yeah.
To be fair, like, sorry if I'm offending any DeepMind researchers. I think there's like a bunch of like good safety research going on there. I think you're the worst AI lab. Very far from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, one thing is that I'm like relatively optimistic about people like DeepMind. Right? I think that they're like, they're probably our best bet of like the people who are most likely to get to AGI first. And they're also one of the places that I think has the best chance of like doing a decent job of that. So like we could be in a much worse situation, right? We could be in a place where like Facebook was leading the way towards AGI or something like that.
I think Demis said in an interview that he wants to like spend some time on fully doing alignment research when we get like close to AGI.
Right.
The question is like how close, like when did you start to do like full-time alignment?
Yep. These things could use, they could stand to be a little more concrete. In the same way, like it's pretty encouraging the way that OpenAI has this charter about like trying to avoid races, where they're like, if we are, if there seems to be a race, we will like stop and collaborate with our so-called competitors and all of this. This is like nice words, which it would be great if that happened.
To be fair, I think OpenAI is doing a better job right now. I think Sam Altman is replying to my tweets about GPT-4. He's now retweeting my AI alignment charts and commenting on them, and is going on meetings with Gunnar, is building a new alignment team at OpenAI, probably.
Sure.
So I think we're kind of more and more reaching out to those people, and they're taking alignment more seriously. Maybe not seriously enough, but I guess for the charter, it's kind of loosely defined.
Yeah, it would be really nice to have that like really pinned down very concretely about under what specific independently verifiable conditions it would trigger and exactly what they would be required to do and everything like that, right? Like
that's a problem with law in general.
I mean, yeah, sure. But it's like very hard to do it well, but it's like very easy to do it better than it's currently done. Like all you need to do is like, I don't know, you can say, like the people who work on Metaculus, right? They have experience on how to do this.
On 1st of January, 2045, noon, UTC, if the website isitagi.com says yes in green, then this means we succeeded.
Yeah, like just any kind of, Yeah, just any kind of objective operationalization of those commitments, such that it's like very, very unambiguous when they should be deployed, and so that you can't just wait, or there's like disagreement. It's like you want common knowledge that this thing is happening, right? You want it to be independently verifiable.
Well, I guess
I'd like to see that.
On Metaculus, people have like specific benchmarks. They say if you're able to do like self-driving for a certain amount of miles, and you do like less errors than a human would do at the same time, then maybe you can call this AGI. And if we need to do like regulation on like, please don't build AGI, maybe you could say like, please don't like pass those benchmarks. Or so I have like some crazy friend in Berkeley who just like wants to like regulate AI very hardly, and he wants to like require companies to make it fully interpretable. You could like bound the number of like compute they use, bound the like number of parameters. Otherwise, they need to pay something.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can like limit the research efforts into doing something general. I think you could like say your AI need to be a tool AI that only is applied for like doing specific, things with Google search or something.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's like a bunch of like economic incentives to do something general.
Yep. And corporations are vaguely analogous to AGI themselves, and things that come in the category of like, you must not break these specific rules, are like, yeah, there will be loopholes. There's sufficient incentive. It's not like these things are completely not worth trying or whatever, but I'm not like incredibly hopeful about them.
Are we like making progress on climate change with the carbon tax and all those things? I think companies are doing more greenwashing. Obviously, they're not like fully optimizing for reducing climate change, but they're like doing some work on it.
Yeah. And that seems right. Alignment washing seems worse. It seems worse because
safe washing, I think someone said, and that's wrong.
Okay, yeah, sure, that makes sense. Like this was kind of what I was talking about before. That there's various things you can do that look like alignment on current systems, and in fact are, right? Like they meet the definition. You are in fact getting the model to more accurately do what you want it to do, but they just like don't survive self-modification, or they don't survive the level of optimization power that superintelligence can put on them.
Don't you think we need to like ask stuff gradually, like first make them interpretable, more robust, and then maybe they will like understand what is alignment and like recursively self-improving AI, this kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe. The point I was just making is that it's like there's a sense in which having a system you can't align, having a design for an architecture that you can't align, that you know that you can't align, is a better state of affairs than something that's like kind of aligned and you think is fully aligned but isn't, because that first one you actually don't turn on and the second one you do. There's a risk of things that give the impression of an alignment effect, but don't actually like solve the hard part of the problem. And so it's difficult to like make, it's difficult to know how much more optimistic to become when various companies start like making the right noises, because you don't know if they mean the same thing by alignment as we do.
You don't know if they're like mesa-aligning with, the taxes or regulations you're putting in.
Yeah, I mean, they might just be more optimistic.
I think if everyone listens to this podcast, they might just become a doomer. Do we have any like thoughts for hope or?
Was that too doomy? Okay.
Oh, I just like think of like a bunch of different solutions. I try to like come up with plans. Some of the plans, Connor would say they're like pretty bad. Because they're like too risky, or don't take like enough into consequence the like second order things that come. I'm pretty bullish on policy regulation in the sense that even if we like don't solve alignment fast, if we manage to like map the political landscape well enough, we could reduce the speed. Like at least like if I see like a world succeeding, I don't see like a world succeeding where we like find the correct equation. I feel a world succeeding where we just like slow down things a lot. And then maybe work on an equation, but like we need to slow things down. Otherwise it's like not sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah, my position on this is like, and again, not very well informed.
Same here.
Would be nice. Slowing down would be nice. If you're working on AGI research, like consider not doing that.
Oh, so one thing you can do is you pay AI researchers to do AI alignment instead, and you just like give them like twice the salary.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, there's like these 2 job offers.
Yeah, it's expensive, but we have money and apparently we don't have to do it for very long. So yeah, maybe we could afford that kind of burn rate. It's possible.
It's been something people mention a lot on Less Wrong or other forums where, some people just like work in AI. There's just like no job for them to work in AI alignment. And there's like no money for it. So they just like, make $400K working for Facebook. And do we have like any concrete job paid like $400K for like AI alignment research? Maybe there is like an Anthropic, but there's like no concrete things to do. And like, if you don't really have a bunch of like expertise, do we have like enough ability to like take those people in and like offer them like competitive offers?
Yeah. And like, I think actually we kind of do now. There's so much, that's another thing that's changed like during the pandemic. There's so much more like money in the ecosystem now.
Well, yeah, there is more funding, but I guess like a bunch of EA money, so effective altruism money, comes from Facebook stock and crypto. And I'm unsure like how much Facebook stock like crashed a little bit. And I guess maybe it's just,
so did crypto.
Yeah, so maybe like a little bit less than we had before, but yes, it's still impressive, yeah.
Yeah, like when it comes to like being able to pay tech salaries.
But compared to like the actual market cap of AI research, it's still like epsilon.
Agreed.
Do you have any words of encouragement for those like 5% or 10% chance of us succeeding? How would you describe Robert Malls in this ideal world? What are you doing? Still doing YouTube videos, and there's like a super intelligence just doing stuff outside, and you're like connected to an AI. You're just.
You mean like what does the world look like?
Maybe it's just like the 1 year before we do it, or like the way we do it, and then maybe if you want like your life after that.
Well, I mean, 1 year before, I expect to be like a very frantic and bizarre world.
What kind of frantic and bizarre?
Just like things changing very rapidly, economic upheaval, right? Because like before you get AGI, you get automation of a bunch of stuff. I also would expect there to be a bunch of like residual upheaval because like things take a long time to go from research to product to widely used product. It's like, it's not a long time, it's a few years, but like that becomes a long time. And so by the time there's like a research AI system that is like a full-fledged AGI that like starts to take off at whatever speed it ends up taking off, I expect there to be at that moment a whole bunch of things coming to the end of the pipeline of these like pre-AGI technologies, changing all kinds of things about our lives and work and relationships and communication and transport and everything. I expect it to be like a pretty wild time to be alive. And like hopefully humanity can like stay sufficiently coherent and coordinated through all of that to like tackle the AGI thing well.
And be like, oh, something weird is happening, maybe we should do something about it.
Yeah, like I think at that point, like at the point where it's too late to do anything, people are going to be pretty on board with the program.
Someone who could claim that we're already at this point. I feel like, okay, last night, instead of preparing for this podcast, I spent 2 hours from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. generating a bunch of images with the same prompt with DALL-E 2, the same exact prompt, and it just like gave me like crazy images. I was just like stuck. It was like, wow, this is great. And I think we're already like in a crazy world where I can just like have fun generating like pictures of anything with my computer, and it's like normal.
Yeah, but like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we would have said the same thing about whatever the latest, like, we think that now is crazy. It's not very crazy. There is so much crazier it could get. There's so much space above us in craziness.
It could be crazier, but in terms of like, you know, helping humans do things, you know, helping designers design things, helping like, there's like so many applications of stuff like DALL-E or Party or like.
Sure. Oh, by the way, I'm starting another YouTube channel, hopefully.
And you're mentioning it after like 2 hours of podcast.
I forgot. Or at least I'm thinking of it, called like AI Safety Talks, which is basically just like, there's a bunch of organizations where people are giving really good, interesting talks about various alignment topics, and those tend to be either not recorded in like bad quality, or recorded in okay quality, whatever, and then put on the like Research Institute's YouTube channel that has like 200 subscribers and it gets 17 views. And so I want to like make a place for like long form, like researchers talking about their research. The reason I bring it up is because I designed the logo with DALL-E. Actually, I designed the logo. It ended up being a mixture of things. We had a paid graphic designer who produced like some stuff, and I like kept bits of it. But the first thing I did was describe the thing. AI Safety Talks is a YouTube channel about blah, you know. Its logo gave that to GPT-3. And it generated me some nice completions about ideas of what it could be. It's like, oh, it's a person pointing to a whiteboard, you know, like they're giving a presentation, or like a projector screen. And on the projector screen is like a brain made of circuit board or something like that, was like or a brain made of like network graph nodes or whatever.
What people think when they, like most of like illustrations of AI is just like this brain with like a circuit board.
Yeah, exactly. And so then I took that and gave it to DALL-E to get the logo. But so like in this case, you know what, we did end up paying a graphic designer. But the bit that I kept from actually there's a couple of bits that I kept, but like the main bit that I had to keep from the designer was the text, because DALL-E can't do text at all. But like apparently, what is it, Party?
Yeah.
Does text perfectly well, so yeah.
Google, if you want to like sponsor some new logo, you know who to talk to.
Yeah, but I really like that. I really like that workflow, right? You use GPT-3 to get inspiration for like what the logo should be, and then you give that to the
We're already in a
generator.
crazy time. We can just like ask people for their prompt for their like generated text, and then like put them into like a logo generator. And
Yeah, that's like, but that's, I don't want to understate, like that is crazy. It's just like so low on the scale of the potential craziness that is like on the horizon.
the next thing is going to be very crazy, and then it's like going to be like outrageously crazy. Why not do it on your main channel? Because I don't know, how much time do we need to go from like 0 to 100K like subscribers? Like if you like, okay, I think like a bunch of like AI safety work could be just like on your channel and be like, you could get like 500,000 views, right? If you get like a talk by Ivan Obinger, you know, it depends on your timeline, right? But if you think the channel could grow fast enough.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I can ask my audience about this, but I think if it were me, if I were following a channel, like if I say I'm following like 3 Blue 1 Brown, and he was like, yeah, you know, I wish more people understood more mathematics, so I'm gonna just also add on the main 3 Blue 1 Brown channel a bunch of like lectures from good mathematics researchers about their work.
But that sometimes
I would unsubscribe, because like that's not why I'm like, he's unusually good at explaining things. He puts a lot of effort into making them like very approachable for the general public, and like I do not have the mathematical background to like get much out of watching a professor of mathematics give a lecture about, you know, topology or whatever.
As a subscriber of Robert Miles on YouTube, if I get like a talk about AI safety every like few months, I'll be more than happy. And to be honest, the YouTube short thing, you sometimes do like, promote cool like AI safety like programs like the Inverse AI Alignment Prize, the AI safety camps kind of thing. So in that sense, it's not that much different, right?
Yeah, I suppose, but those like, they take a minute of your time if you want to watch them, like literally a minute, because it has to be. I don't know. My guess is, because the other thing is I want to put out quite a lot of stuff on this channel, right? It would become the majority of my channel if it was my main channel. I could start putting them all on Rob Miles too. But yeah, I like the idea of it being not Rob Miles branded. It's like Rob Miles affiliated, but it's not like as though these are my videos, because they're not. Like what I expect is a bunch of these research orgs to just regularly from time to time be like, oh, so-and-so did a talk about whatever, and like we would upload this to our own YouTube channel, but we'll just send it to yours. It's like a kind of central location to put all of these things. And I don't want to have like a super high threshold of approachability, because I would like researchers to really be able to benefit from being subscribed to it. Like this is as much about helping alignment researchers to understand each other's research as it is about outreach. And then I think what I would do is highlight on my channel with YouTube posts whenever there's a channel on AI safety talks which is like particularly approachable or understandable, or something that is like something I expect my ordinary audience would get a lot out of watching. That's my current thinking. But you're right, like it is definitely a problem to like start a channel from nothing and it has very few subscribers or whatever. But I think I can promote it pretty hard at the end of my videos and stuff like that. I don't know. I'm open to being persuaded on that.
Okay. I think you might overestimate the number of people who get like upset on YouTube and like unsubscribe. I would give it like 1%. Okay, high bar is like 1% of people. If you upload like 10 videos of talk, you're like, he was funny, but now he's like pushing like a bunch of like AI safety talk. But like, if you care about AI safety enough to subscribe to Robert Miles on YouTube, you like kind of enjoy having like more AI safety content.
Maybe,
but
I do this all the time.
You unsubscribe from a bunch of people after like one video.
No, like when I'm like, okay, this channel, I subscribe to this channel for this type of video and it's become this other type of video. I'm like, this channel isn't what I subscribed for. I'm just going to not do that. I curate my subscription feed because I spend way too much time on YouTube. I'd like that time to be like used efficiently at least. But yeah, maybe I'm generalizing for myself too much. I don't know.
There's no mute button on YouTube. You can just like subscribe and mute.
Right. Yeah, and I wish that there was a thing that was like, well, I wish that you had like 2 streams, right? So many people have a second channel. I wish that oh man, okay, feature request for YouTube. This thing that I just thought of. What you do is, you subscribe at a level that's like daily, weekly, monthly, let's say. And then, so if I'm like subscribed to you at a daily level, then you get one, like each video you publish, you can like rank it according to like, this is like a particularly high quality thing, or like this is medium, or this is not. This is just like a little behind the scenes, whatever, that only people who are really fans are going to even care about. And then it's like fills up my feed. If I've already seen, I'm trying to think how this algorithm would work, but you see what I mean? Where it's like, I'm not going to get more than one daily level thing per day. If you upload 10 daily level things in a day and I'm only subscribed to you on the daily level, then I'm only going to get whichever one of those you thought was the best one. Whereas if I'm like a full subscriber, I get all of them. So if I subscribe to, like if someone subscribes to me on a monthly level, I get one monthly level, like once per month, I can allocate a video to be like, this one is a monthly video. This is a particularly good one. And so then you could subscribe like just for the best ones. Don't show me more than one a month, or like don't show me more than one a week, or whatever.
I think it's a great new feature for a new version of Stampy. I think you could do something with notification as well, like the bell thing when like people notify you if there's like a new video.
Right.
And yeah, please subscribe.
Yeah, I guess we're on YouTube now, huh?
Subscribe to this. Oh yeah, right. If you're in podcast, sorry, but subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter and Spotify and those kind of things. We have no rating. We currently have no rating on Spotify.
Wow.
So if we could have ratings, it could be great.
Oh, I wonder if oh yeah. You know, I do a podcast. It's called the Alignment Newsletter Podcast. If you're listening to this as a podcast, you may be a person who enjoys a podcast, in which case, if you're interested in alignment research, Rohin Shah, who is right there, almost slap bang in the middle of the...
I'm sorry, Rohin, I didn't ask you for this. And it's probably wrong.
He makes a very excellent weekly newsletter about this week in AI safety research or AI alignment research. And I just read it out every week.
Did you still do it?
I do it when he makes them.
Oh,
he's
right.
been like on a hiatus recently, but he's starting up again.
Right, yeah, he's the bottleneck. So subscribe, here's the button. I don't know where. And do you have any final thought, final sentence?
I don't know, man. Like, there's definitely some kind of thing here that's like chin up. Like the right thing to do is to try and solve this problem. It seems really difficult. We're not guaranteed to succeed, but we're not guaranteed to fail. And it's worthy of our best efforts.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.